What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. We are your co-hosts, Spencer, Gabe, and MJ Kuhn, and today we are joined by Nicholas Eames, author of Kings of the Wyld and Bloody Rose, to hang out and chat about his career so far. And of course, we'll have a spoilery segment for Kings of the Wyld later on in the video, but don't worry, we'll give you fair warning first. Before we get into it, make sure you're booty bopping those like and subscribe buttons down below. And don't forget to hit the little bell icon to get notified when we put up new content. You can also follow us on Twitter at Files Fantasy to keep up with what we're currently reading and to be witness to me mostly making an ass out of myself, honestly. Remember that every time you hit those buttons is another inch of water that drains from Gabe's plexiglass cage in my basement. And it's down to his waist now. So keep doing the right thing and smash those buttons. A quick announcement that I'll probably mention in the next couple episodes of the podcast so that everybody hears it. We have started a second channel called Fantasy Files Reacts, where we talk about movies, TV shows, video games, stuff like that. So go check that out if that's something that you're interested in. We already have a few videos up on there that I've kind of moved over from our main channel. So feel free to check that out. I'll leave a link for it in the description. With all that out of the way, let's introduce our guest for today. And as we always do, talk about what we've been reading lately. Nicholas, do you go by Nick? Can I call you Nick?
Oh yeah, Nick is good.
Okay. So do you want to talk a little bit about, like, in case people have been living under a rock, do you want to talk about like what you write, kind of who you are, where people can follow you?
Sure. Thank you. First, I will apologize for any coughing or sniffling during this because I'm very, very ill, but taking a few COVID tests and I haven't got that apparently. Just a cold that my niece and nephew weathered just fine, and I've been down and out with for a week. Anyways, yeah, my name is Nicholas Eames. I write a series called The Band, which consists of a book called Kings of the Wyld and Bloody Rose. You are entirely forgiven if you don't know who I am. Because fantasy authors don't really get that famous. I remember my mom once was like, "You're going to be a famous author," and I'm like, "Mom, do you know who Joe Abercrombie is?" She's like, "Never heard of him." I'm like, "But as famous as an author can get, or a fantasy author can get, and you've never heard of him." So
right, yeah.
So yeah, you're excused for not knowing me, and also and thank you all for having me on here today, and
for sure,
and Spencer and Gabe for your your reviews and deep diving, and MJ too for joining on them with that last one, and also just for in general, you've been such a huge champion of the book, and I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, heck yeah. I'll keep telling everyone to read these books.
Perfect. Perfect.
Where could people follow you?
Just out on the street. I usually leave my house around 10 every day. Yeah, not too close, obviously, but Instagram. I kind of don't really respond to Facebook friend requests anymore, and haven't for the last few years.
Yeah.
I mean, rarely, once in a while, but definitely not to anyone I know. But yeah, I'm on Instagram. I take lots of pictures of books on an old sewing table, and coffee, that kind of amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, some football stills, and then otherwise Twitter, and I'm mildly active on both.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, Facebook is kind of a wasteland nowadays, isn't it? I don't think I've been on it in probably 2 years, I think. It's just weirdos over there now.
No offense to anyone. If you're a weirdo, that's still on Facebook. No.
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah.
Right?
But yeah, about the Joe Abercrombie thing you mentioned, it's funny how, like, in our like Twitter community and kind of our reading and writing community, we get to know all these authors and we're like, oh, this person is like super famous, but then like my roommate would have no idea who Joe Abercrombie is. It's funny.
Yeah. And even fantasy readers, I've talked to like long time fantasy readers, and I'm like, I'll reference the Liza Locke Lamora, and they'll be like, I've never heard of it.
Oh, really?
You're like, perfect. Let me send you a copy. You should
I actually have two copies with me, so let's read it together.
There you go. Do a little giveaway.
It's like you're not doing anything else until you read Lies of Locke Lamore.
Yeah, I actually have my original copy of Lies of Locke Lamore just kind of like crumbled apart at the seams. So every bookmark that I own, I have about 8 in circulation, is a folded up page of Lies of Locke Lamore.
Wow. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, if I'm ever reading a shitty book and I'm caught out in the middle of nowhere, I've at least got a page of something amazing.
Right, one lone page.
Yeah.
I have so many versions of that book. I think I have 3 of like the Gollancz version, and then I have like the UK version, and then just the American paperback. And I love that book so much. Every time I see a new version, I'm like, that's mine.
Yeah, it's got some beautiful covers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
really cool.
Yeah, I need the UK one. That cover is super pretty.
Yeah, my favorite is the one with Locke looking up at the tower. He's like in the corner and he's looking up at the glass tower. I love that one.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about what we've been reading lately? Have you guys read anything interesting?
Yeah, so I've been reading a series. They say it's lit RPG, but I kind of don't feel like it truly is, but it's called He Who Slays Monsters. And it's an 8-book series. I'm on book 6, and it is like, I am so into it right now. I don't know if I could explain it to you guys very well, but it's really, really good. And I actually think that Spencer, you would like this book. If you can get past the first book, which is kind of a slog, the rest of it is like very like Reskin-y and like kind of like these serious plots and stuff. It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
That's it. That's been consuming my time for the last like 3 weeks. So
nice.
Great.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I'm kind of bummed right now because I went through this, well, not bummed, I guess, but I went through this period of time where we had like no books that we needed to read for the podcast. And so I was like reading whatever I wanted, and there was some DNFs and there was some good ones. And now for the next like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, we're like completely scheduled. I'm like, I know exactly what I have to read. And so now I don't have any like wiggle room to do things like He Who Slays Monsters, but I definitely want to. I definitely want to try it.
What are you reading right now?
Me, let's see. I just read book 7 of The Expanse, and I really liked it. I really did not like book 6, and I know that a lot of people do like it, but for me, I was like, man, this could have been a novella. And so book 6 was quite a bit of a slog for me, and I wasn't going to DNF the series or anything, but it did make me hesitant to go on to book 7. But then somebody told me that, you know, there's 9 books in the series, and the first 3 are one arc, and then 4 through 6 is another arc, and 7 through 9 is like the final arc. And so knowing that book 7 was the start of a new arc, I was more inclined to go on to that. And I read it and absolutely loved it. I was like, oh, this is the Expanse that I've been wanting to get back to for the last couple books, because book 5 was fine. I thought it was good. I did enjoy it, but it wasn't like book 4 or book 1 or 2. Those were like my favorites. And so getting into book 7, I was like, yeah, this is exactly what I've been looking for. And then I just reread Kings of the Wyld for this.
Never heard of it.
I never heard of it. Oh, I read Legacy of the Brightwash. Have you guys seen this going around on Twitter by Crystal Matar? It's an indie book that just got a deal from Podium, like they, I guess, sponsored it or something. And so she's got an audiobook, and it was really good. I went into it thinking that it was going to be like a kind of like Gaslamp, grimdark type book, kind of like First Law or We Men of Ash and Shadow, something in that same vein. And it is kind of set in that world, but it is undoubtedly a romance book. Like it is like straight up like a fantasy romance. Like most of the story was about these 2 characters getting together. And I thought that was really interesting because that's something that I hadn't seen before. And I'm not really a romance reader, but I would say that out of everyone on the podcast, I'm usually the one who enjoys the romantic subplots the most.
Mushy stuff.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so
not today, bro.
not today. Yeah, not today. So yeah, I did enjoy it. I don't know if I'll pick up the second one just because that's not typically what I read, but it was pretty good. It wasn't bad. What about you? Anybody else?
MJ?
Yeah, well, I recently read a book. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's called Bloody Rose. It's right here behind me. Yeah, so I read that. I read it both on audio and then I finished it on paper book because I always get the audio book of something, and then if I really like it, I want to like revisit passages. So I always just buy the physical anyways. I need to just stop.
Double trouble.
So there we go. And I really liked it. You guys, Spencer, Gabe, you guys need to read it.
Yeah,
and then we need to have a conversation because I have thoughts. Okay.
Okay.
Good. I liked it.
Okay.
Yeah. And then actually right now I'm reading, I got an advanced copy of Barrow of Winter. So it's by H.M. Long, Hall of Smoke. So it's the third book in that series. I'm not that far, but it's really good so far. So yeah.
Okay, cool. The books behind you reminded me of, did you by chance go back and watch the episode we did on Kings of the Wyld at all?
Oh, I did a little bit. I was like, well, and of course I did. I was on
it. You go back to that video and just watch like the final 10 seconds. I have the funniest clip of you at the very end. It's so good. It was just this moment where I'm not going to be able to recreate it, but you said it so fast. The book was behind you and you spun around and you're like, and I have Kings of the Wyld. And like, it was like, you said it within like half a second. It was all,
I was excited.
And it is the funniest end clip ever. You have to go look at it.
Oh no. Well, hopefully everyone has enjoyed it.
It's great. Yeah. What are you reading, Nick?
I just finished reading Gods of Jade and Shadow by, I want to say, Sylvia Garcia Morenz. Could be Morenz Garcia. She also wrote a very popular Mexican Gothic recently. And this book was great. It's kind of like magic realism kind of fantasy. It takes place in a real life Mexico in like the 20s. And it was great. It's so many cool like themes and a mythology that I wasn't familiar with. So I loved it.
That's cool.
Nice.
And then I just started a book called The Thousand Eyes by A.K. Larkwood. Her first book is called The Unspoken Name. We share a editor, my first editor, who was at Orbit and has since gone to Tor. So she publishes this book, and I love the first one. She sent me the second one so long ago, and I've got so many friends that were jealous that I've got a copy of it. So I might as well finally get to it. And the first book has one of the best last sentences I have ever read in my whole life. It's so good.
Oh, wow.
So
cool.
good. Yeah.
Okay. What's it called again?
The first one is called The Unspoken Name.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. The Thousand Eyes is the second one. A.K. Larkwood is the author's name.
Okay, for sure. Have any of you guys read Babel, the new R.F. Kuang book?
Not yet.
No, it's on my TBR though.
Yeah,
I love R.F. Kuang. Yeah,
I kind of want to. I didn't quite enjoy the Poppy War, but I think it might have just like hit me at the wrong time because it wasn't like I wasn't like this is a bad book or anything, but I just wasn't like feeling it at the moment.
I mean, it's heavy. It's a lot. It's like, hi, would you like to read thousands of pages of war crimes? Like, it's dark. It's dark, but it's very good.
Yeah.
And it kind of tricks you too. It gives you the things you're going to read. You think you're going to read about a little academia story, and suddenly,
and then it's like surprise.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've heard. I think I got to the main character. I forget her name. She had just gotten to like kind of the academy or whatever, and they were kind of going.
The book hadn't even grip on you.
You didn't even get to the war crimes,
right? Yeah. and
it will have you Googling real life events to see if humans can really be that evil, and it turns out yes.
And like, you don't want to Google it. Don't go that way. That way there's only sadness and tragedy.
Okay, well now I have to read it because that's what I love.
I had to learn to love Japanese people all over again after that.
What's that?
I had to learn to love Japanese people all over again after that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I had heard people saying that it was like really, really dark and stuff. And like I said, I got to where she had just gotten into the academy. She had been through maybe a few classes or whatever. And I was like, this is just kind of slow. I need something a little faster right now. So does it picks up soon after that then?
Well, yeah, picks up is maybe the wrong word, but yeah.
Yeah.
It
Changes in
it's an
tone.
absolutely
How's
different
that?
book.
Okay, for sure.
Well said.
It pivots.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested to pick up Babel because I've heard it's like I guess dark academia. Is that the subgenre?
I said that to a table full of academics the other day, and they laughed and laughed and laughed until they almost cried and said, all academia is dark academia.
So is academia then just like young adults at a school? Is that kind of what the subgenre is?
Yeah, or even anyone at a school, I would say.
Okay.
But yeah, like Name of the Wind is kind of almost academia, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
Or like Ninth House, Lee Bardugo. That's
okay.
Dark academia.
They go to classes.
I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been meaning to read Ninth House. I've seen a lot of people talk about it.
It's also very dark.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
As you said, it's all dark.
I know. I read it and it like was one of those books where I like had to stare at the wall for a while after certain passages.
Just like cool down a little bit.
Yeah, like whoa, what did I just read? Anyways, yeah.
Okay.
I'm also listening, and I'm 2 hours from the end of Peter McLean's War for the Rose Throne series. I've done all of them on audiobook just because he's got a great narrator, which apparently switched after 2 books and I didn't notice it. Yeah, but both narrators sound exactly like Pete in real life, which is like someone who is like has spent a life drinking and smoking and yelling.
Yeah.
He's got a really super gravelly, voice, and his narrators sound just like him, and they're perfect because those books, if you're unfamiliar with them, are like Peaky Blinders fantasy.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that the like Priest of Bones, that series?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been meaning to get to that for a while. Is it
same?
Is it Peaky Blinders with magic?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And not even that much magic either, just a little bit. Yeah, it's just kind of a different story, a bit more ambitious maybe than Peaky Blinders.
Oh.
But it's good. And I highly recommend the audiobooks. If you ever do audiobooks, they're awesome for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of audiobooks, MJ, did you get to listen to the audiobook for Kings of the Wyld or?
So I have it downloaded, but I haven't gotten to listen to it yet because I wanted to listen to Bloody Rose first.
Okay.
Which the narrator for Bloody Rose is very good too. So
nice.
He's awesome. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say the narrator for Kings of the Wyld is outstanding. I absolutely loved all the voices that he had for all the different characters and everything. We pretty much read almost exclusively on audio, so we really appreciate a good narrator. What was it like working with him? Did you have much interaction with him, or was it mostly through the publishing company?
I didn't have any interaction with him whatsoever. I got at the time I had absolutely zero clout, whereas now I have a tiny little bit. And I do mean that. I wasn't being like facetious, but they just basically said, "Hey, is this guy okay?" With the implication that if he wasn't okay, they were still going to go ahead and use him.
Just as a formality.
I was like, yeah, he sounds good because he has kind of it's a unique voice. I think for audiobooks, it's very like rural American. I almost want to say, he hasn't got a Southern accent, but he's got a very kind of like simple sound to his voice. And so that was actually the first audiobook I ever listened to. I'd never heard one before of my own.
Wow.
And it was kind of cool. So I didn't have any say, not with thank God he got all the names pronounced right. Like in my head, characters like Calarek have like a swarthy Londoner accent kind of thing. So he didn't do any of those, like any kind of British accents, but his voice for Calarek was phenomenal. And if I recall, it's been a while since I listened to it, but his voice for Lastleaf was phenomenal too, if I remember correctly.
Nice.
And then he just really kind of nailed that dry humor for Clay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I
for
thought
sure.
I thought that he does like the monsters really well too, like the kobold. I forget the little kobold's name.
Oh yeah.
But like
Yeah.
and of course the two-headed giant, like they were all just
Yeah.
like perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's
and I
like
remember
that's what I would
I've
think.
got like kind of like a Rastafarian troll in there that could have been a nightmare if
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
going for it, and he really handled it well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I'm sorry, buddy.
That's great.
Excuse me. I got a bit more say with the second book. They gave me two different, maybe three different voices. And one of them I almost picked just because the woman had done, and I insisted on a woman for the second book because although he did a great job, like the main character of the second book is a 17-year-old woman. So
Yeah.
I was like, and especially like when lots of times when guys do a girl's voice, it's just horrible.
Yeah.
Like, have you
Yep.
ever heard a woman? They don't sound high pitched. They
Yeah.
have the same fucking voices as us. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just crazy. And they always put on this like falsetto, and I'm like, no.
They all sound just like that though.
Yeah. So I was like, please, can it be a woman? So, but the one of them they suggested was the woman who does the Becky Chambers books.
Okay.
Like, which I fucking love, and are beautiful books, but her voice was very kind of soothing and comforting and soft. Whereas the woman I picked, Catherine, forget what her last name is at the moment, which is terrible, but she was phenomenal. She's got kind of like a youthful edge to her voice and kind of like a rawness that I thought was just perfect for the story and especially for the character. So
Nice.
and on like if you do listen to it, like there is like first paragraph, she says something, and I was like, oh shit, you made my book better already.
Nice.
You said
That's how it should be. That's awesome.
That's
yeah,
great.
yeah. She nails the poignant scenes. And Bloody Rose is a lot more poignant book, I think, than the first. So she nails them. It was great.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I think there's certainly very few male voice actors that can do women voices well. I think Nick Podell is one.
Yeah,
he
I was
does
just gonna say that.
really good female voices. RJ Bailey, the guy that did We Men of Ash and Shadow, I think he does really good female voices. But it's got to be a hard thing to do, I would imagine.
It's got to be a rarity because like those are literally the only two people I can think of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Literally.
the guy who does Joe Abercrombie's audiobooks, which
Oh yeah.
like Joe Abercrombie, someone who I have read every one of his books, and just with his last like 2 books ago, I listened to one instead because I heard he had a good narrator, and I will never read it on the page again because his narrator is astounding.
Nice.
Yeah.
Really?
Stephen
Oh my
Stephen
God.
Pacey. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And so he doesn't put on a falsetto for women voices. They're just phenomenal. Every character is so unique, and
Yeah.
he's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I got to get back into First Law. I've been feeling the itch for a while. I've tried to read it twice. I've gotten about 70% of the way through The Blade itself twice.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, okay, all right, I got to stop. And like and everybody says this, I know, but that first book has no plot. Like it's just character development and
Vibes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's excellent vibes.
Yeah.
It's vibes.
Yeah. And people have told me like, you just got to get to the second book. And it's like, I will someday. I just can't right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, keep on. Cause I put that first book down. I was about halfway through, and I put it down for, I think, 1.5 years.
Oh
I
yeah.
was like, I've seen all these things before. Wise Old Wizard. Yep. Seen it. All this stuff. And he keeps so many things in his pocket until the last few chapters of that book.
Oh.
I don't even think you need to wait to the second book, but there's just things like he could have kept me reading earlier if he put these hooks in, which is not bad.
Yeah.
Because the surprise and payoff at the end of that book is, I think it's great. So, but
Okay.
I never blame anyone for having a rough time with that first book, because I understand it, because it's he plays into all these tropes before flipping them, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll definitely give it another chance. Have you guys read the sequel trilogy? Is it The Age of Madness?
I definitely have. I'll get any Gabe Abercrombie book the day it comes out. Like, he's the best of the best.
Awesome.
Oh, okay, nice. All right. Well, let's see what we got here. MJ, do you have a question you want to kind of start us out with?
Sure. I mean, I have several. So I guess the first question that I'll ask is what kind of like a basic one, but like, what were your main inspirations for Kings of the Wyld? Like, if you had to pick just a few things that just made that pop into existence in your brain.
God, I wish I knew like the exact moment, but it was definitely while I was reading the book Ready Player One.
Cool.
Does get a lot of hate, but that book was, so much just like about the things that person loved, just unabashedly so. And so I think that was part of the inspiration, because Kings of the Wild is very much a book about all the things that I love about fantasy. I'd been writing a book for 12 years that was like trying to emulate my favorite author, which was like very unfantasy. Like if you told me when I was, or anytime writing this, the 10 years before I wrote Kings of the Wild, that I'd write a book with goblins in it, I would have been like, no, I am way too goblins. I'm a grown ass man. Goblins are for children. And so it was just kind of, Ready Player One helped me remember what I loved about fantasy. And I was like, okay, fuck all this like politics and, war and culture. I'm just going to make it like unabashedly fun and fantasy. So as many people pointed out in the book, if there's like a chance for like cohesive plot development or a joke, I'll choose the joke.
Yeah.
Like bar none. We'll go into that in the spoiler section, but and then it was also because of Ready Player One, there's a scene in the book where he has to listen to a Rush song and kind of puzzle this thing out. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to this song. And so I was listening to Rush, and so many of their, I mean, I should have already because they're Canadian, but I just started listening to them, and fuck, are they ever good? Like just awesome music in general, but stunning lyrics, especially if you like fantasy more than any other band that I know of, that at least mainstream band, because there's lots of other ones, but their work is so involved with fantasy, it's crazy. And there are now so many Rush references in both books, it's insane.
Yeah.
And so I was listening to that, listening to Rush, and I think that's probably where the idea of like mercenaries as rock stars came from.
Okay.
And then I just kind of clung onto it, and I actually wrote the first 3 chapters just as they are almost never ever edited, even through editing. And I wrote them, and then I went back and worked on another book for another whole year. And then as I was sending it off to get rejected, I was like, okay, let's see what this other book's about. And off I went.
I feel like that was really like a perfect meeting of the two, like the bands of the mercenaries, like in this world treated like rock stars and like rock bands. Because if you think about it, like these guys who go out and do these big missions and come back with all this treasure and all these things, like like the public would probably treat them like these not only heroes, but like these like rock stars, and people would want to emulate them. I liked how those two things met. And then you have like the new generation trying to kind of somewhat follow in their footsteps, but also going their own way. And we'll get into that more in spoilers, but I really enjoyed that part of it. You mentioned the humor in this book, and I wanted to tell you, and I swear I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass. This, the more I've read this book, I've read it 3 times now. And the more I've read it, I think that it legitimately might be like the number 1, like funniest book I've ever read. There's so many moments that are just laugh out loud, no matter what I'm doing. If it's on, I'm laughing. And I mentioned on our episode that the humor reminded me a lot of the Dresden Files. And I was wondering if you were a fan of the Dresden Files or anything.
I've only listened to, and another books that I audiobook. I'm only 2 deep, which I'm told they get better as they go along.
Yeah.
So I haven't noticed them be really too funny. They're kind of like wry and sardonic, at least for the first 2.
Yeah.
But they're definitely not like laugh out loud funny. And to be fair, I hadn't really read too many funny books before. I'd read Liza Locklamora's got some humor in it.
Oh yeah.
And Joe Abercrombie obviously has a lot too. So Scott Lynch and Joe Abercrombie were the 2 like funniest that I'd read, at least. But I didn't read Terry Pratchett even until after I got a book deal, and then now I've read tons of them. But
okay,
yeah, he's the king when it comes to comic.
Everyone's telling me to read Pratchett, and I'm worried that, like, I feel like Kings of the Wild was hilarious while also having like a really good story and like really, really deep and like sad and tragic moments. I'm a little worried that Pratchett is going to be a little too goofy for me. I don't know if that's true.
Well, I mean, it depends where you start, but I don't think he will be. I remember when I was working in bookstores when I was younger, and I would look at these Terry Pratchett books, and that's when I was writing my super serious fantasy book.
Yeah.
And I'd look at his books and be like, "The Fifth Elephant, like this is ridiculous. Who would call this?" You know, and I've been like slaving for years on this book, and I'm like, this guy's just calling books the Fifth Elephant. Like, what an idiot! And it turns out that I was in fact the idiot. Because his books are, I mean, if you could read the right one, like I started with the book Going Postal of his, which is it's a ridiculous title, but they're so good, and they are kind of a little bit poignant, and honestly, like there's just as far as like this person is brilliant when you're reading the book, you're not going to dislike it. He's too good. He's too good.
Okay, for sure. All right. Well, we talked about the interaction that you had with your narrator, and you were saying that the publisher handled most of it. Did you have any interaction with the cover artist?
No, well, a little bit. The cover artist is by Richard Anderson, who is my favorite cover artist of all time.
Oh, cool.
I just love him. He also is like now. What's that?
I just said he did a great job. I mean, they're gorgeous.
Yeah, especially the Bloody Rose one. And I've actually had the cover for the third book done for like a couple of years now. I just need to write a book worthy of it. It's so good. And he also did most of the concept art for like Guild Wars 2, which I played the shit out of because it was so pretty.
Yeah.
And now he does like Marvel concept art. So yeah, he was like my favorite. And I think the day before I end up getting a publishing deal, I had put these two books that I had bought on my Instagram, and like, they hadn't realized that that they're the same cover artist. I just bought both of them at the store, like Brian Staveley and something by forget who the other author was. Anyways, came home and like posted them, and I was like, oh, these are the same cover artist. I clearly have like a type. And so well, my editor and I were going back and forth on what the title of the book would be, because the Kings of the Wild was not my title. I wanted to call it The Band, and I fucking had my heels dug in pretty hard. And they suggested like 1,000 other things, and I was like, no. But I think she knew in the end that I was definitely not going to get my way. So she kind of went kind of above and beyond to get my favorite cover artist, because there was a while there where I thought, because I famously, like, I don't like a lot of fantasy covers. I think they kind of shoot themselves in the foot. I'm someone who tries to recommend fantasy books to non-fantasy readers all the time. So if you've got just like a screaming wizard on the cover, I'm just like, this is not my grandma's not going to like this.
Right.
So I like covers that are a bit more subtle, or just more art driven. And so, yeah, I was worried. I was like, for a while, I was like, I'm going to have this book that I don't like the cover. I don't like the title. Hopefully people will look on the inside. And then suddenly, they got the cover artist for me, who I loved. As soon as they said who it was, I knew I was going to love it. And then Kings of the Wild, I love that title too. So
nice.
Worked out in the end.
You're like, whew.
Yeah, I haven't named a single one of my books. Did you get to name your book, MJ?
Yeah, I was lucky. They hadn't changed it. Actually, and my sequel, they didn't change that one either. So I've been lucky so far. But I mean, it's so funny when you hear about stuff like that, because there's so much you don't have control over, especially when you are the new kid on the block. You don't have much pull. So it's like, okay, yeah, I guess we're gonna do it this way.
What's your sequel called? Are you allowed to say it?
Yeah, Thick as Thieves is the sequel. Awesome. So yeah, going with the thieves.
Yeah.
Nice.
If it ain't broke.
If it ain't broke.
Roll with it.
I can't remember if it was a different podcast or if it was that Mike's book reviews thing, but wasn't there what you're with God damn it, Orbit. had to look at the book. Wasn't there someone else before Orbit who you're gonna sell it to, and there was some sort of disagreement or something, and then you end up going with Orbit? Am I right?
No, it's true. Yeah, I had when it came to both agents and editors, I had other people interested that wanted the book changed pretty drastically.
Yeah.
They wanted a lot of the humor gone. They wanted one person wanted Moog completely out of the book.
Oh my gosh, dude.
As I've posted publicly many times, I am a Candice Moog stan.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. So yeah, I think like publishing, you can't really blame them because they very often want to go with what's safe. But a few people tried really hard to make it like a Joe Abercrombie light, which would have sucked because it's very different than Joe Abercrombie ultimately. And thank God I found my agent who said, put all the rock references back in because the ones I had taken out for a previous agent, and then found an editor in Lindsay who was just liked it as it was. And they in fact, Orbit was on a weird kick that year, which they will never probably be on again, where they wanted bigger books. Yeah, when I finished it, it was 120,000 originally, and my agent maybe cut it down to 100. And then Orbit wanted it to be 150.
Whoa.
But there was also
something I've never heard where they want it longer.
Yeah. And I think it also fucked over a couple books that came out that year because they end up being a little too big. And sometimes, even myself, I used to love those chunky boys, but not so much anymore.
Yeah, well, and not every book's meant to be a doorstopper. You know what I mean?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, it worked out only because there was about 10,000 words that they wanted out, these kind of flashback scenes. So they got taken out, and I added about 40,000 words. And pretty much the words I added were Last Leaf, who did not exist in the book. He's like the main antagonist. Was not in there at all.
Wow.
That guy was like a big bad horde. That's how simple it was. So Last Leaf was added in the final edit, and also Moog being infected with the rot was added at the end, and both things obviously made the book way better.
Yeah.
And especially Last Leaf, Last Leaf's story ultimately is the catalyst for everything that comes after.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I can't imagine Bloody Rose without
it. Wouldn't exist.
Right. It couldn't. Yeah.
Nice.
That's crazy. Good thing they were looking for chunky books that year.
Exactly. So I feel very, very fortunate that I found the right editor at the right time, the right agent, and they just happened to want bigger books. It made everything much better.
Well, so I'm always telling people that are, getting into the author game. A lot of it is making sure you have a strong book, but God, so much of it is luck. You know what I mean? Luck and timing, and just sometimes things shake out a certain way.
Gabe, did you have any spoiler-free questions or?
No, they were pretty much answered. Well, I was going to ask about literally what you were just talking about. It's all good.
Yeah, that was one of mine too, was just the debut journey, how it was. And that's always something interesting to talk about because it's different for every single writer.
You may have heard this story. I did tell it on Mike's, I think I mentioned it on Mike's channel, but funny enough, I got a text from one of my friends, Eugene, yesterday, who said, Sebastian de Castell says hi. Because I don't know if you've heard of him. He wrote a book called The Greatcoats.
Yeah.
Well, he's wrote a lot of great books, but it was his first series. And my buddy works at the restaurant I used to work at, and Sebastian de Castell came in there. But that's how I kind of got my agent, is that he came into my restaurant. I was up flirting with the hostess as I did, and saw his name, de Castell, and I was like, how many de Castells can there be?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm put him in my section. So he sat in my section, and it was his wife's birthday. And I was like, hey, I'm working on a book too. So, and he came in a few times, and I went and saw him at the Writers Festival. And when things between me and another agent didn't work out, he very graciously offered to put me in touch with his agent. So
cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool.
That's awesome.
So again, another crazy stroke of luck. And when we met for coffee one time, and he brought me a copy of Trader's Blade, hardcover that you couldn't get in Canada. And inside he wrote, consider this a down payment on a copy of your first novel. So
cool.
2 years later, when there's a special edition hardcover of Kings of the Wild, I made sure to get one for him. And
wow.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Super
well,
cool.
See, you say it was luck, and yes, obviously him having to come into your restaurant was, but you still, you had the guts to be like, put him in my section. I want to talk to this man. That's something too.
Taking chances and being an advocate of your own work is also kind of important.
Yes. Yeah. Super essential. I love that. What a cool story. That's awesome.
That's great. I did want to ask about kind of going back to talking about like your cover artist and stuff. You've commissioned a lot of art, like the stuff behind me. How's that been working with? Is that the same guy or is it a different person?
No, the art behind you actually is the French cover.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought it
Yeah.
was commissioned.
No, that's the French cover. I've actually never commissioned anything myself.
Oh, okay.
The only thing that has been commissioned is the people that bought the option, like the TV film option.
Okay.
They commissioned that artist to do one. It's like a Last Supper type image. That's like
Yeah, I saw that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
I've seen that online too.
Yeah. Otherwise, I've just been extraordinarily lucky, and that's another one of those things. And I think it has helped immensely interest new readers in the books. Is there's this artist named Felix Ortiz, who he made the first piece of fan art for Kings of the Wyld. I remember I went onto Facebook one day and saw this picture, and it was of like a guy with rabbit ears and red hair riding a black wyvern, and I was like, that's familiar.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like Kings of the Wyld fan art, and I was like, what in the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Right.
Away. And he proceeded to do some incredible like paintings and sketches of like his Larkspurs and Ganelons were amazing. He did some Clay Cooper ones, Gabe one that's really somber and beautiful. He just did so much, some great Bloody Rose ones of like Rose kind of like facing off against this Cyclops. And he did so much of that art that when my original editor Lindsay went to Tor and was publishing a book there, she got him to do the cover art for it. And now he does covers for self-published authors and for traditionally published authors. And so the rest of the stuff is just like, I think seeing that art kind of inspires other people to make it, and it just kind of starts steamrolling, because I have been unbelievably fortunate when it comes to how many people will take a shot at character art. Yeah.
I think it's not even just fortunate. I think it's because the characters are so vivid, and like I feel like I have such a good picture of who they are and like what their energy would be if I could draw worth shit.
Yeah.
Like I would be inspired to try, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of just, it's because the characters are so rich. That's why so many people try it. So
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I used to draw all the time. You'd think I would have taken a crack at it by now, but we'll see.
Yeah, I was just about to say that when I was in my younger teens, I would sketch and draw, and I would do like anime characters and all sorts of stuff. And I really wish that I had kept up on it, because now there's so many characters that I read about in books that I would love to like that don't have fan art out there that I would love to like make pictures of, but I'm pretty sure I've lost all of those abilities now. But you did mention optioning the book for film. Is there any news on that front, or how's that going?
I wish there was. It's about like a month away from the end of its 3-year option period.
Okay.
In which case the rights will revert to me, but I think the person that's got the option, we may try to work out something where we extend it for another 6 months, just because there are a bunch of kind of like our irons in the fire that may very well turn out to be nothing, but they're kind of worth keeping in there for the time being. So we'll see. There's been a couple times where it's been close, but it's a tricky business. You think publishing's slow? Like this is
right? Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
But also thanks to years and years of like getting rejected with querying and trying to find an agent, I no longer have like my expectations don't get up. I just don't think about it.
Yeah.
Which is like sad, but I get it.
Yeah. Thanks for breaking me inside publishing.
Yeah. Well, I said that to someone at my day job the other day. I was like, you can't hurt me. I work in publishing. Like,
Yeah.
well, I'm dead inside.
Yeah. It's crazy. Even like Mistborn, like Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn, it took forever for that to get rolling. Patrick Rothfuss has had King Killer really, really close to like a TV show or a movie quite a few times, and even that's fallen out. So I can't imagine, as much of a, I guess I don't know what the correct terminology is, but there's so much fantasy TV coming out right now. You would think that producers and stuff would want to pick this stuff up, but yeah, I'm sure there's so many moving pieces that
Yeah,
that
I
go
know when
into
they were
it.
going around with it, like COVID happened and COVID stalled a lot of things down. So for the 3 years, these people have had the option. I do feel kind of bad for them because it's like they were trying to pitch during a time when things were being taken off the roster. And then also, like I say, they went to Amazon at the time. Amazon's like, we spent all our money on these 2 shows, so we got
Yeah.
nothing.
That's the other thing
Yeah.
I was gonna say is money, money, money for
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
especially with fantasy stuff because it usually
Takes a
needs
lot
lot
of CGI
and stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also, I mean, I've got the very unpopular opinion, especially in people that know more than me, are all just about like someone once came to them, the people that have the rights, and said, we'd like to make a movie. And they said, no, we want it to be a show. And I was like, you sons of bitches.
Oh yeah, that
Make a
sucks.
movie. Like,
yeah.
Right.
because I think it would make a better movie than a TV
Yeah.
show. I think it'd make a great TV show, but I think it'd make a way better movie, especially you could have a way bigger budget. You know,
Yeah.
you could,
Yep.
you could blow that budget on over the hill stars or, you know, aging stars and a classic rock soundtrack. Whereas if you're doing a TV show, especially if you're not like huge budget, which you probably wouldn't be, you know, you'd have to really pick and choose your licensing things and
Yeah.
Yeah.
and also there's just like there is too many fucking shows these days. Like there's
Yeah.
so many shows. I can't even watch all the fantasy shows out there, let alone
No.
No,
Six-
well, that's people are texting me and they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Mallory, you like fantasy? Did you watch this?" I'm like, "I haven't even heard of that."
Yeah.
There's, 30
Yeah.
streaming services.
Yeah, every time I go on Netflix, there's like 6 new shows that I see.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I need to watch all of these."
Yeah, yeah.
we've got,
And then
we've
you
got
never
too much.
do.
Whereas like a big movie comes out that's fantasy, like, you know, like the new Thor or something like that. Like everyone goes and sees it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's fair.
I think movies are due for a comeback. We'll see.
Yeah.
I hope
for
so.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's way too many. And I feel like just in the past, like 6 months, there's so many shows that are like, you know, a 4th season or a 3rd season or whatever that have come out that I've been meaning to get to, but they all came out at the same time. Like I'm still waiting to watch Westworld season 4.
Me too.
The Boys. I need to watch the rest of The Boys.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. I need to watch I'm on episode 3 of House of the Dragon. So hopefully I'll be able to do that soon. But there's a whole bunch of other ones that I'm totally forgetting about right now.
Yeah.
It took me forever to finish. I don't know if you guys watch Barry on is it
No,
Amazon
I've heard
Prime?
I should though. I've heard
Yeah.
it's good.
It's really, really good. I really like Barry.
Have you guys seen? I deliver for Amazon, and now all the packaging is the new like the Lord of the Rings show.
Yeah, the Rings of
Yeah.
Power.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
have you any of you guys seen that?
Yeah,
I'm like 3 episodes behind.
Yeah, I haven't even
I
tried
started
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely like it's too slow for me at least, but I think it's great. It's beautiful to look at. All the
Yeah.
characters are awesome. I mean, better to be safe than sorry. They did it really safe, I think, with it. And so it's good. I mean, I know there's lots of people that claim they love Lord of the Rings and then hate this show, but I love Lord of the Rings, and so I love any show on it. Like I'm not one of those people that think new media can tarnish something that exists already. I don't care. I don't care at all. Like you give me 10,000 Star Wars shows. If I hate half of them, great. But
Right, like who cares? Then I'll just watch the half that I like. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's my energy too. I always say I like to like things. So like I'll try to find something to like about, something, especially if it's Tolkien stuff, because I love Lord of the Rings and all that.
Yeah.
So pretty so far so good. It is no House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon crushes it.
Yeah.
House of the Dragon is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think Rings of Power is suffering from the fact that those 2 shows came out at the same time because people are just inevitably comparing them, and I am too, and I'm watching both, and I do think because it's snappier. House of the Dragon is moving a little.
It's
quicker.
snappier, and even just, there's a scene, say in like Rings of Power, where it's like someone addressing a throng of people in a marketplace, and it just looks like a set. They look like actors.
Yeah.
Whereas that would never happen in Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones,
No kidding.
it is real. Like it's so.
Which is funny too, because I feel like there was very little maybe not very little advertising, but there was very little buzz about House of the Dragon outside of the immediate like fantasy community, right? But Rings of Power had like a huge amount of buzz. Like there was giant billboards for it and all this stuff. They put tons and tons of money into marketing.
And when I say every single package.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go. It's on the Amazon package.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Every single package.
Yeah.
I think that's smart advertising.
Yeah,
Right.
sure,
Yeah.
Definitely.
They know they've already
Definitely.
got us cornered.
Right. Yeah.
For real. They got the whole world cornered.
They're like, look at
Right.
it. Look at it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Except I was like, who the fuck doesn't know that there's a Rings of Power show? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But see, we're in this like little insulated community of awesome nerds
Yeah.
who of course know there's a Rings of Power show. But like,
Yeah.
does grandma know? I don't
does
know.
grandma know?
Right.
Yeah, I probably like four or 5 months after Wheel of Time came out, and I had already gone on my big Wheel of Time rant. My mom texts me like 5 months after it comes out, and she's like, hey, did you know there's this show called Wheel of Time? It looks like a fantasy show. You might like it. And I'm like, no, Mom, don't talk to me about Wheel of Time. It's just like,
I love it. But A+ for mom. knowing
Yeah. Oh yeah. She
that
tried.
you love
Yeah.
fantasy.
She
I know.
tried.
I know. She was like, you might like it. I was like, well, we'll talk about it later.
We'll talk later.
Well, speaking of contentious subjects, we haven't addressed the Final Fantasy versus Zelda.
Oh,
It's not even a debate.
yeah.
But if
So,
you wanna, we
yeah.
can.
Nick, you poor lost soul. You're first of
I'm
all,
so
you're
scared. What side are you on? Why are
You're-
you a lost soul?
you're outnumbered here, by the way,
Okay.
because we have 3 Legend of Zelda fanboys and fangirl.
Yeah.
So yeah, what is it about Final Fantasy that you love that makes it more iconic than Zelda?
I mean, it's hard to say. It is hard to say it's more iconic. It probably is, and ultimately in the end, but it's close, obviously. But it's just different. Like they're not. I don't think they're comparable games. Like I was trying to find a good analogy for it today, and it's like I don't get me wrong. I love Zelda, but Zelda is just gameplay, right?
Yeah.
It is beautiful scenes, but it's just gameplay. There's no friends becoming enemies, enemies becoming friends. There's no like
Yeah,
Ganon is a bad guy, but he's just like a figurehead. He's not.
Yeah.
You're never like, oh fuck, I gotta beat you, Ganon, because you ruined my
Yeah.
life. He's
Right,
just
yeah.
there. He's just there. at the
Story
end.
is not as cinematic for
It
Zelda,
almost
for
like
sure.
so. It was like playing Zelda is like turning the pages of a book that has no words written on it because they didn't write any. It's just the action. Whereas Final Fantasy is the story. It is and they both have good music, but it's ultimately Zelda's got one song going for it, and Final Fantasy
Yeah.
a billion.
Hard disagree, but okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like music wise, Final Fantasy pretty like I think it crushes it. But
It does have good music too.
Yeah.
I like both. I like the music of Final Fantasy a lot, but
totally,
I'll send you my whole playlist of Legend of Zelda music. All right.
it's good, but it's like the new Uematsu, the guy who originally composed Final Fantasy, is like considered, besides maybe John Williams, one of the greatest modern composers. You know, like he's good. But just it's ultimately just comes down to it has characters and stories and plots and shocking moments and twists and like subtlety and irony and everything in it. Whereas Zelda is just you're just playing, you're just goblins and I don't get me wrong, I love it. But in order to win this argument, I have to put it down and stop its head. And it just doesn't compare. There's no something like Mass Effect crushes Zelda because it's got a story, you know?
I was literally just gonna say that a lot of games like Mass Effect are a lot more cinematic than Zelda in terms of plot, which I totally agree.
You can't trash Zelda because they don't make mistakes because they don't take enough risks. Whereas Final Fantasy, you get a shit Final Fantasy, but you get a good Final Fantasy and you're trashing other games.
Yeah, because aren't there like so many Final Fantasies? Like
There's like
a bunch of games.
17.
Dude,
16.
so I'm gonna just throw myself under the bus right now. I have never played Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
And so I don't really have a vote here because and
But
same
you're
with
voting
that,
on my side, so I say you get a vote.
yeah. But same with that, like I've only like really truly played Breath of the Wild Zelda, and I would completely agree with you that there's just like this generic plot, right? And then you just go do your own thing, right? And you have to get to this one
has even
story.
less of a plot. Like if you look at a game like Twilight Princess is a lot more linear, where you're kind of hedged in to follow the flow of the story. And I do think Twilight Princess and maybe Ocarina of Time might be the two with the strongest, most cohesive plot.
I was gonna say Wind Waker. That had a phenomenal story.
It did for the first half, and then it goes.
No, the ending was so good, where he finds the statue of Link from Ocarina of Time.
No, it's brilliant. I love Wind Waker. I will expound upon my love for Wind Waker.
That's also like, it's a neat thing, but it's not like I cried at the end of Final Fantasy X, fucking hard.
Yeah,
I cried hard, and no one's gonna cry at a Zelda game. You know?
No, and that's fair. That's like, and it's like, not to belabor Mass Effect, but like when I beat Mass Effect 3 for the first time, I stopped playing video games for like 3 months because I was grieving.
Yeah.
And you don't feel that with a Zelda game. I understand.
But different folks. I mean, this year, like Elden Ring came out. Like I played Elden Ring, and I played Yakuza Like a Dragon, and to me, Yakuza Like a Dragon is 10 times better than Elden Ring, because Elden Ring has no story. Once again, like you say that, and people are like, "Oh, you just got to dive deep. You got to go here." Like,
right? You're like 1,000 hours in. Where is it?
How deep do
I need to dive?
Yeah, you shouldn't have to dive deep for a good story. It should be
I
watched
a friend of mine play that Elden Ring game, and I just knew that it was not a game for me. It just wasn't a game that I would enjoy.
I would think it's a masterpiece, but like, hands down, as is almost every single Zelda game, but also so is every single Final Fantasy almost.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I tried playing Bloodborne, and I got maybe 30 minutes into it, and I was like, dude, I can't do this. Like, this is so difficult.
Oh no. Yeah, because that's another Dark Souls like, right?
Yeah.
I haven't played Bloodborne, but
yeah. And games like Bloodborne, Dark Souls, Elden Ring, the story is all told through the environment. So it's not like you don't, as far as I know, you don't really like get too many cutscenes and stuff. It's more like you read about the world from like notes and books and stuff that are kind of placed around the world. And I think that's an interesting idea, but I have very little time on my hands. You know what I mean?
It's hard to binge into a video game these days. I agree. Yeah.
And to be fair, like Final Fantasy's dialogue isn't like the greatest. It's not compared to like Mass Effect. Mass Effect, you're going to get those moments where like someone's in an elevator and they just like sigh, and you know what they mean and what they're carrying on their shoulders and what they're about to do, and there's so much context. Yeah. Whereas Final Fantasy is a bit more like anime style, like in your face kind of dialogue. Or right now I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima, which is a fucking masterpiece. Like,
dude, I've been meaning to play that one. I've heard it's incredible.
It is mind-blowingly good.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Final Fantasy? If Gabe's gonna play one, which one's he gonna play?
Yeah, that's a great
my favorite would be different than what I think is the best to start with. Yeah, I mean, my favorite Final Fantasy ultimately in the end is Final Fantasy Online, like the one that's currently going strong. Like,
oh really? Okay.
Finally crushing World of Warcraft the way it always should have.
And that's an MMO.
MMO. Okay. Final Fantasy 14, and it's been around for like 9 years. And I don't know if you've heard, like it came out and it was a disaster, like a fucking disaster. And so they were like, "What are we going to do?" They weren't like Square is the kind of company that just doesn't want to put out a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So they hired this guy to help it, and he essentially like split the team in half and made half of them keep making the current game better, while the other half invented a whole new game behind the scenes in a short amount of time. And then they re-released it, and it is like the best MMO that's ever existed.
Oh, cool, dude!
So far, until at least the League of Legends ones comes out. But anyways, it's so good, and it has everything that's ever been in Final Fantasy. Like it's had 9 years to like bring in all the bad guys from old Final Fantasy. Every single musical theme is back in there in a different way, and it's like not its latest expansion because I'm not through it yet, but the one before that called Shadowbringers was the most devastatingly sad video game I've ever played. And probably the last 6 hours of the expansion just in a state of like soul racked agony and beauty, because like these really sad goodbyes. And if you ever watch anyone's like any of these YouTube players playing it, they're just sobbing for 6 hours straight.
Wow. Oh my god.
So Online ultimately is phenomenal.
Therapeutic though.
And it's a wholesome kind of game. But yeah, I have my personal favorite is Final Fantasy VIII, which many people hate. I just thought it was so cool. The music's great. It's very cinematic. It's got like the coolest ending of any game I know. But yeah, 6 and 7 are great too. The remake of 7 is a good place to start, I think.
Cool.
Was it 12 or 13 with Titus and the?
That was 10. That was a good
10,
one. Really
10.
good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah. They're all great. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But I would start probably with the next one. Final Fantasy 16 is coming out next year.
It looks really good.
Is that going to be an MMO as well, or is Fantasy?
No, it's a straight like single player. It's a bit
Okay.
more actiony, I think, than the previous Final Fantasies, because like Final Fantasy invented kind of like turn-based combat, but
Yeah.
they've been going a bit more actiony. And the guy who made this one is the guy that fixed Final Fantasy 14.
Oh, cool.
okay.
He's like the Messiah now of SquareSoft. So
Awesome.
And
so yeah, they got him to do this one. Looks pretty good.
And 16 is going back to like the fantasy medieval kind of setting, right?
Yeah.
That's probably what interests me the most. And that is something that I like about Final Fantasy is you have all of these kind of subgenres within it. You have your games that are like the medieval fantasy. You have very much like steampunk, like Final Fantasy 7. And then, you know, there's even ones that are set like a little bit more in the future, it seems. And so, yeah, that is something that I definitely admire about it. I wanted to ask, so for Final Fantasy 14, is it still turn-based combat?
No, it's basically played very similar to World of Warcraft. Have you ever played World of Warcraft?
Yeah, yeah.
So the original Final Fantasy 14 was like the guys didn't even play World of Warcraft, and they just made a MMO, which kind of sucked. So these people just emulated World of Warcraft. So you play it exactly like it. You get your panels of buttons. It's very much an MMO because it knows that it would have had to teach a lot of people how to play MMOs because people love Final Fantasy but not have played MMOs. So sometimes when hardcore MMO players first get into it, they think it's too easy and too slow, and the turnaround to be able to click your buttons again is a bit slow, but it ramps up pretty quick. And by the time you're past the first area, it's just so good. It's so good.
Nice. Okay, so I wanted to ask on Mike's book reviews, you mentioned that you're really into like turn-based like JRPGs like Persona and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Do you play many like I guess games like Mass Effect that are like single player campaigns, story based?
Like Fallout, Skyrim,
Gears of War.
I played I did play Gears of War. That's actually Gears of War 2 has one of the saddest moments in video games that you didn't see coming. It's a shockingly sad moment. I normally do play some like action games, like obviously Ghost of Tsushima is pretty actiony. Mass Effect's pretty actiony. I do kind of prefer the turn-based ones or like strategy games on the computer and stuff like that. I'm a huge like Total War fan, but yeah, obviously if a game's got a good story like Ghost of Tsushima or Horizon Zero Dawn, something like that, then no.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to play Horizon Zero Dawn. It looks pretty dope.
It's so good. It's so good. It's
just the coolest setting that's ever been imagined.
Yeah. The new one is without a doubt my game of the year, the Horizon Forbidden West.
Oh really?
It is incredible. They took everything that was fantastic about the first game and kept it and then added on to it. Like the UI hasn't changed. The way that combat works hasn't really changed besides a couple things. But they knew they had something good and they're like, we're not gonna fuck with it, which is not the case for a lot of sequels. You know,
so they didn't do what the Mass Effect people did with Andromeda then.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and then for the second game, they just added like a ton of new dinosaurs, a ton of new robots, and a bunch of new weapons, and I don't know, all sorts of stuff like that. Like everything they put in was in addition to, instead of like, we're going to completely change this.
Yeah.
So I really, really like that about it. And the story, I definitely cried at the end of that game. It had a really touching story. But I was curious if you're
saying it's better than Zelda.
No.
He's like, I gotcha.
No, like
because crying doesn't equal fun, truly.
Yeah, always. Yeah, like that.
I mean, I would say generally crying.
Yeah,
but it means that you're invested in it, you know.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the Horizon games certainly have a deeper story and deeper like combat system and everything than Zelda. But for me, Zelda is mostly nostalgic. Ocarina of Time was my very, very first experience with anything fantasy.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
Like your gateway to all fantasy, like books, movies, games.
Yep.
Okay. Well then, yes, that's like your
How to
origin
explain this
story.
illusion.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, and Ocarina of Time, like I kind of think that Ocarina of Time is like a perfect story. Like it's perfectly paced, like everything in it is just set up. You know, you have like two halves to this game and both of them are really, really good. And so yeah, that's kind of why I fell in love with Zelda. And then of course going on to Majora's Mask, which is a whole nother world.
Fever dream
Yeah.
of wonderfulness.
Yes. It's so trippy and so weird. And they just got.
Have you played A Link to the Past at all?
No, I've heard.
I don't think so.
It's very good. That's my husband's favorite.
That's my personal favorite Zelda. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah,
I like the Link's Awakening, especially like the remaster. I thought was really good for the Switch. I really enjoyed that.
I haven't played any of the like top down or side scrolling Zelda games besides Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. I really like those games. I haven't
played those ones. I've heard they're really good though.
They're really, really good. But yeah, I don't play a whole lot of top down or side scrollers in general. So that was like an exception. But yeah, I don't know. Zelda just it's the beginning for me, you know? But I was curious if you've played BioShock or either Deathloop or Dishonored, games like that.
I haven't played Dishonored or Deathloop, but yeah, I played BioShock back in the day, BioShock 1 and 2.
Okay.
I have played like Skyrim, and I like it, but I do tend to like fizz out on them just because they're not very story driven. If something's too open world, then it's just kind of not necessarily my thing because there's no direction to it. Like Skyrim, it's like for your first quest is to go up to the mountain and talk to this guy, and I never did it. I was like, walking around like a god at level God knows what, and on the first story quest, nor did I feel compelled to.
No, that's so true though. Skyrim, you can totally go rogue for
whereas something like The Witcher is like, yes, it's also open world, but you're also compelled to do the story.
Right.
Not if someone likes the other kind, they're great, good for them, but I tend to like, there's a couple Final Fantasies that get like drug over the coals for being on rails, and I'm like, I don't mind it once in a while, just like give me the story. I like that.
I definitely go back and forth. Sometimes I'm in the mood for just like a straight through story. I've noticed that in recent years I like something that is open world light, like Outer Worlds. That's a perfect, I love that game. I'm playing it right now. And I feel like it gives you just enough of an open world to where you feel like you can roam and kind of go do things, but the main story, like you're not gonna get to the other planets if you don't do the main story. So you're kind of stuck in one place unless you progress. And so
many of the quests are like character related.
As
opposed to just random stranger related. So
definitely. But yeah, and then I do like what was the other one that came to mind? I guess any of the BioShocks, like BioShock Infinite is my favorite BioShock, and it drops you in this world where you're more or less like on a straight line, but you can go back if you want. Like if you want to backtrack and go and do things you missed, you can do that, but you're headed in one direction towards the end of the story. And I really, really like that as well.
Yeah, they do have phenomenal world building, those games, for sure. Like I played a couple days of BioShock Infinite, and it's really cool.
Are you nervous about the new one coming out?
I'm never nervous about anything. I want to like it. If I don't like it, I don't like it. I don't care. Like
it's the best attitude. I love it.
I feel people's expectations are, especially these days, the death of their enjoyment. They expect
I know.
Something like I didn't not like Wheel of Time because it wasn't like the books. I didn't like Wheel of Time because it was garbage moment to moment.
Yeah.
I don't care if it uses the same characters as the books. I don't give a shit. Just make a coherent show in which people make rational decisions. Oh, you can't.
Yeah.
Alas.
Here we are.
But I want to like everything. Absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy for anything that comes out.
Yeah.
The best.
I would say I'm definitely more on the cynical side, but I want to like things. I do.
Spencer's very cynical.
Yeah, I am. But
Gabe's like, you're going easy on it, right?
I feel like I too was once, like, probably, I don't know how our age disparity, but I was way more judgmental when I was younger and before I had produced art, obviously. And you just kind of get to realize that, like, it's so just like, there's just so much out there, and it's so easy with the internet to like yuck people's yum, and say why you didn't like something. And I just kind of tried to stop doing it. Like, I've written a negative tweet about something I didn't like, and then just been like, no, you don't need to put negativity out in the world.
Yeah, that's fair for sure. The only reason I'm excited, so what I'm getting to is I'm excited about the new BioShock game. Like, big BioShock fan here. But the only thing that worries me a little bit is the guy that did the first 3 games is not on this project. And it's been like what, 8 years, 7 years, something like that. So yeah, there's like a whole new team, everything. And I'm just like, please just capture the spirit of the first games. That's all I want. I just want it to feel like BioShock. That's all I care about. Yeah,
that'd be great. What's the setting, do you know?
Antarctica. It's kind of like Rapture, but it's in Antarctica, like below the ocean there. Or maybe it's up in a mountain or something, but it's frozen. Everything is frozen. Yeah. So I think that's going to be a cool setting. Yeah. All right. Well, before we get into our spoiler talk, I wanted to ask you really just one question, is the one that I really wanted to get to, if I can find it here. The next book that you're working on, is there a title? I forget.
Yeah, Outlaw Empire.
And it's if Kings of the Wyld is like 70s ish, Bloody Rose was 80s, right? And this third one is 90s.
Yeah.
Are you planning a book? I love 90s music, but are you planning a book after that one to go into 2000s? Is it going to go? No. Okay.
No. And I was on a panel recently that had a big debate about this, because some of these older people on the panels, believe it or not, in this panel, I was counted as a younger person, we're saying that the 80s was the last decade with its own identity. And I was sitting beside Catherine Valente, who finally just like exploded, and she was like, "No, it's fucking not." and I definitely have, me and a few of my friends have like had some debates about whether the 80s or the 90s has more iconic stuff in it.
Yeah.
And it's a hard debate. Yeah. In the end, way easier than the Final Fantasy Zelda, because Final Fantasy just. But I do think, I would argue that after that, it's a little bit less so, just because these things like the internet happened in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And like in the 80s, everyone got their music taste from MTV. There was only the one channel. There was no music streaming service. Like everything came from the same place. So everyone kind of liked the same thing.
Yeah.
Whereas in the 90s, that started to diversify a lot, and you got a lot more different voices and a lot more different people making music. And then by the time you got to the 2000s and the internet came along, it just was like everywhere. So no one was getting the same, like was watching the same channel for music, because there were so many kind of niches out there.
Yeah.
So it's hard to pin down. There's obviously a few fads from like the, whatever you'd call it, the aughts or whatever, that you could maybe pin down, but that's not the same as these decades where media was just so small that everyone was fed the same stuff. So the 90s is kind of the last one that really works very well for a lot of instances, and the general vibe of it, which is essentially like, fuck you, person that wants to be the boss of me, whether you're looking at hip hop, grunge, or Rage Against the Machine.
I was literally just gonna say, okay, slow down there, Zach De La Rocha.
Yeah, it's all very kind of like angry. So yeah.
Well, I was gonna say the 2000s had almost it's not the same as it was before, but there was kind of a new rise of punk bands like pop punk essentially in the 2000s.
Woo,
Like
former emo kid.
yes, exactly. The whole emo scene and Blink 182 and Sum 41. I would have loved like references to people having their hair in front of their face.
Yeah. The thing is,
Yes.
you get that too. And if someone's into hip hop music, they would never listen to Sum 41 in their whole life,
True.
And so in the 90s, you start to get that because
Yeah.
you get the grunge crowd and the hip hop crowd.
The great
Separating,
divergence.
yeah.
Yeah, there's tons of music that as like a white kid in the 90s, I was getting like Notorious B.I.G., but I wasn't, because it was radio friendly, but I wasn't getting Nas because it isn't as radio friendly.
Yeah.
Right.
But holy fuck, are those ever important like albums?
Yeah.
Whereas in the 80s, it's like there's no one that didn't listen to Michael Jackson, period.
Right. Yeah.
Everyone listened to him. Everyone listened to George Michael. Nobody didn't. There wasn't separate, it wasn't niches quite the same. So
Yeah. That's fair. Nice.
Yeah, I could be wrong. Someone could come along. We could, with time, could come back and we could look at the 2000s and say this was definitely this. But I don't think you can, because you could say you're one thing and then someone else is going to say something totally different.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's very true. You're right as far as the diversifying, because that was kind of the 2000s, late 2000s were my years in high school, and half of my friends were listening to Sum 41 and all those kind of bands, and the other half was listening to rap, and then the rise of EDM around that time.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also in high school at that time. I didn't realize we're like exactly
the same. I'm sure you remember all the kids sneaking into the raves every weekend. So
I do now. You just unlocked a core memory.
Yeah.
Core memory. That's awesome.
Yeah, and then you could say the same. I think the 80s too obviously had bands like Aha and like that kind of stuff, and Wham.
Yeah.
But it also had like it's Metallica and it's Guns N' Roses and it's Motley Crue and they're huge punk scenes, and like the Cure. So there was like obviously a lot of diversity, but not as much as there is later on in life.
Yeah.
Once the internet came along, it was all over for
game over. Yeah.
It's all over.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess the last question I have before we go into spoilers is you were talking on Mike's book reviews. He said that you're a bit of a mixologist. What are your favorite drinks to make? Are there any good whiskey ones?
Well, the old fashioned is my go-to for sure, just because it's so good and it's so goddamn easy.
Yeah.
I do like a straight like bourbon or whiskey or rye or anything like that. Lately I live in Victoria, British Columbia now, and there's a drink that Victoria has its own drink called the Shaft, which every restaurant has its own version of it. And it's basically like Bailey's. There's slight modifications, but vodka, Bailey's, Kahlua, maybe a little bit of cream. And it's just like, it's a pretty great drink. And there's like some versions of it that use bourbon, which are pretty great too.
Interesting. That sounds dangerously boozy, but delicious.
Very, and espresso.
Nice.
So it's like it's like a pick me up. There's like a lot of cocktails that are kind of like it, like an espresso martini is kind of like it, but it's pretty goddamn good. But I'll drink pretty much anything. I love wine. I used to work in restaurants the entire time I was writing Kings of the Wyld and Bloody Rose. So I just love I did a lot of drinking and nights out and just dining in general. I love so.
For sure.
Victoria is a cool place. My family, when I was younger, we used to go up every year for the 2nd of July, the fireworks show on the water there. Yeah. I love it up there.
Oh, it's way cooler now.
I bet.
I think in the last 10 years, I just moved here a year ago, but in the last 10 years, it's like exploded as far as just like restaurants and coffee shops and things like that.
Oh.
It used to be pretty like where old people went to die.
Yeah.
When I lived in Vancouver, the entire time we just thought of Victoria. Doing a map, you just write old people and goths in Victoria.
That's hilarious.
And so now it's got a lot of cool stuff going on, and so
nice.
I love it here.
Nice.
Can't beat it. You get to live in Canada without a winter, so it's
that's pretty cool.
without
that
a
does
winter.
sound pretty dope. Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Greatest
snow.
place on earth. Yeah.
All right, I'm coming. I'm moving. I'm gonna be an expat.
I highly
I'm
recommend it.
going.
All right. Well, we are going to move into our spoiler discussion from here on. But first, I'm going to kick it over to future editing room Spencer for our first sponsored ad read. I'm so tired. I got like 4 hours of editing to do. I got to make some coffee. What the hell?
Dude, do you even know how long that stuff sits in the warehouse before it gets to the store?
Well, what am I supposed to do? What are my options?
Coffee brand coffee. All the K-Cups like that, they arrive and they're 4 weeks old or less.
Well, I guess I'll check them out, but what am I supposed to do in the meantime?
I guess that.
Why are you cooking a gnome? Introducing Coffee Brand Coffee, a brand new company that gets you the freshest coffee, teas, and cocoa available. It's a family-owned small business that has light, medium, and dark roast in a number of flavors, including their new seasonal flavors, Spice Jack-o'-lantern, Salted Caramel, French Toast, and Pumpkin Spice. They also have cold brew, teas, and cocos that I hear are exceptional. If nothing else, go to the website linked in the description of this video and just read the reviews. Spoiler warning, they're almost unanimously 5-star rated. And Coffee Brand Coffee requires you to submit a picture of your order with each review so that you can trust the source with actually having tried the product. Not only that, but their coffee is made from only the freshest ingredients. You would be hard-pressed to find anything else that has gone through less middlemen than this coffee. Check out their website linked below and use code GABESTEARS for 5% off your order. Let me know if you guys like these ad reads. It's just something I'm trying out once or twice and kind of testing the waters a bit. Now, back to the show. All right. Well, thank you for listening to our first ad read. Maybe you don't need any coffee right now, but consider ordering from those guys before you run out, and be sure to use code Gabe's Tears for whatever discount I said in the ad read.
How did you swing that, dude? Oh, that's
Amazing.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude.
There was a small coffee company that was like, hey, we can give you a discount if you want to do ad reads. So I'm going to try it, see how it goes.
Nice.
I
Let me
love
know,
it.
dude.
That's
I need the
awesome.
discount.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was, and
Easy code for you to remember.
That's right.
Gabe's
Yeah.
Tears.
That's
Your
right.
own tears.
I'm going to
Yeah.
put it right at the bottom of the screen, Gabe's Tears.
Just big letters
Yeah.
blinking.
Yeah, I loved it. It was like, what code do you want to use for your people? And I was like, I was gonna put just like Files Fantasy or something. I was like, no.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I have an opportunity here.
Yes.
Not gonna
Never
waste
squander
it.
the
Yeah.
opportunity.
All right. Well, we are going into spoilers from here on out. So if you haven't read Kings of the Wyld, then here's your spoiler warning in 3, 2, 1. You've been warned.
Yeah. Also, go read it if you haven't.
Also,
read it.
Yeah, for real.
What are you doing?
What
Come
are
on.
you doing with your life?
Embarrassing at this point.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
You've listened to us all talk about it for an hour and you haven't. Come on.
Yeah.
For real.
All right, I have a spoiler question. I want to
Go for
kick us off. I'm gonna be aggressive here because I'm so curious. There are so many hidden references and like sneaky little things in both Kings of the Wyld and in Bloody Rose, but specifically with Kings of the Wyld because that's the only one we've said we're spoiling for. What is your like favorite reference, and what is your reference that you wish more people got? Like the one that you're like, oh man, nobody gets that one. It's so good.
Yeah. Probably, and I think you got it actually, was the Hobbit reference, right? Which I don't think is that well hidden. If someone's pretty familiar with the Hobbit, they're going to get it.
Well,
Yeah.
What was the Hobbit reference?
There's a part where they go to the kobold's house,
Yeah.
and the opening line of the Hobbit is like, in a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, but it wasn't this kind of hole, wasn't this kind of hole, it was a hobbit hole, so that meant comfort.
Okay.
And so in this paragraph kind of paraphrases it, and it's like, in a hovel on top of blah blah blah, there lived a kobold, and it's like, but or it was something, it was a kobold's hovel, so that meant shithole.
Yeah.
Kind of like, it paraphrases the paragraph enough that obviously,
Yeah.
the elite minds among us can get it.
Yeah. For
Yes.
sure.
No.
But the reference I'm like one of the references I love the most that no one gets, almost nobody gets, is actually in Bloody Rose. It's a reference to the movie Say Anything.
Okay.
And it's like relatively subtle, I think, but yeah, some people, maybe about 3 people have ever come out and been like, I get that.
Oh my
Okay.
That's
gosh.
cool.
All right.
Now I'm just gonna be looking for it every.
I know, that's what I was gonna say. All right. Bloody Rose reread. Let's go.
I read it on like
It's not somebody standing in a
0.5
trench
times
holding a
speed.
ghetto blaster.
Yeah.
That's not it.
That's not it. Yeah.
I think I
Okay.
would have caught that one.
I'll have to watch Say Anything before I read Bloody Rose.
Right?
great
So it's
movie.
fresh.
Yeah. Do you know how many like classic rock references there are in Kings of the Wild? Have you counted them?
No, I would even forget tons of them now because putting them in, I have a huge list at the bottom of my like document of ones I want to put in.
Yeah.
And I pretty much listened to just classic rock over and over again for the however long I wrote it.
Yeah.
And the same goes for 80s music with Bloody Rose and 90s music now. And so ultimately there's just too many to like almost every single town or someone's last name, something like Gabriel is reference to Peter Gabriel. Slowhand, I mean, you might have told this with Mike, but Slowhand I had to take out of when I made like my first agent.
Yeah.
Not my first agent, he didn't represent me, but wanted me to take out Slowhand because it was too obvious an Eric Clapton reference. And I was like, buddy, nobody fucking knows this.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have known. Yeah.
I promise you. Yeah. He was putting way too much credit in young Americans' music knowledge. And so, yeah, there's just tons of them. I mean, most of the northern towns in the thing are actually named for scotches. Like there's like Ardbeg as opposed to Ardbeg is the Scotch.
Oh, okay.
Talisker is a Scotch, and Talisgard is the name where Larkspur comes from.
Oh.
So a lot of them are named for Scotches, but otherwise, like most of the weapons, just.
How about the Bating-ting?
The Bating-ting is like the stupidest fucking word I can think of. Bating-ting it is.
You nailed it on that
Oh,
one.
good.
I love
Nailed
the Ting Ting.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the chapter titles are obviously references. A lot of Rush references in there, like Syrinx, Ganelon's axe, is in one of the Rush songs. The one from Ready Player One is about this intergalactic, like priesthood that's going around stamping out music, and they're called the Temple of Syrinx. So,
cool.
Okay. Nice.
And the same goes. They've got another song called "The Fountain of Lamnith," and in Bloody Rose, like the one guy's citadel is called Lamnith. So, just anything like that. There's just tons of them. So I would just forget them.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Like I try to fit some lyrics in there, but obviously mess them up enough that they wouldn't actually be lyrics. Like,
Yeah.
I think you guys might have mentioned one that was like knocking or standing on heaven's threshold without a hand to knock.
Yeah.
You know?
I was just about to mention it. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
That was
Or even in the
fantastic.
final paragraph, it's like there's something about clay, like the last house of the holy or something like that, which is a Led Zeppelin reference. So there's a lot of like things like that in there that
was there was a character who was describing Larkspur at one time, and I was wondering if those were either lyrics from or a reference to She's a Man-Eater. Is that in there?
No, because that's a
Okay.
way too late song, right?
It's what?
Is it like Nelly Furtado's Man-Eater?
No, She's a Man-Eater.
Isn't that Nelly Furtado?
I don't know. I don't know.
I'll Google it.
Right? Gabe's like, I got this.
I'm Canadian, so I think
Yeah, maybe that's too late. Okay. For some reason I thought that was older than it was.
Just associating Larkspur with a Man-Eater. It's fair.
Don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, I love some Nelly Furtado, but no, her whole thing was based on Black Sabbath.
Oh, okay.
Why her real name is Sabbatha and why it's spelled like Black Sabbath with extra D.
Oh, yeah.
So the Man-Eater you're thinking of is by Daryl Hall and John Oates.
Yeah,
Wait.
Hall & Oates.
Oh, okay.
And that very well could have been because that song would have been on the playlist back in the day. So
okay.
Yeah.
See, like you said, there's so many of them in there. You're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then the Kings of the Wild, there's both books have Spotify playlists for them.
Oh, cool.
Kings of the Wilds is like on my website, there's a chapter for chapter breakdown about what song kind of inspired what chapter. And although it's not like 100% as far as like it's the only song that inspired a chapter, they are pretty major. Some of them are bang on, like the scene where they're running away from the dragon, like in the airship at the end. I had started writing that scene a couple times, and at first, like, the dragon talked, and there were conversations with it, and I was like, just couldn't figure out how to get it done. And then I was walking to work and had ZZ Top's Lagrange on, and I was like, this whole scene just appeared in my head. And now you could listen to ZZ Top's Lagrange and read that chapter, and every single like beat of the song or high pitched note goes with the scene of that thing. And it
that's
my
cool.
God, I love that.
Yeah, that's super cool.
And then the same goes for like the ending, where like I used to walk to work every day and at least at some point put on Freebird by Leonard Skinner, the guitar solo, and just let's do it over and over and over and dream up the end of this book. And as far as like, say if someone made a movie of your book, I don't care if they change anything about it, as long as you give me the dump truck of money.
Yeah.
But if you didn't use the song Freebird, I'll kill you. And I'll kill you.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's just so integral to that. It's like the ultimate climax song. And so envisioning like those bands, one after another, coming out of the portal, I was like, that's the only song that'll do. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Did you have did they use your playlist in there's two versions of the audiobook, one that's just the audiobook and one that has music in it. Did you have any input on that playlist that they used?
No, and the playlist it can't use like licensed songs, because that would be so
yeah. Okay.
I think it just uses generic music.
Random.
I heard it's a really cool version, but I haven't heard it yet.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't. I assumed, I don't know why I assumed there would be licensed music in it, but that makes sense that they wouldn't be able to get the rights to all that.
Yeah. And the same goes for like Bloody Rose doesn't have people kind of ask, because there's a chapter by chapter one with Kings of the Wyld, if there was a one for Bloody Rose, but in Bloody Rose it's more like every character is based on like a genre of music. So there's like the punk, the metal, the goth, the like pop.
Okay.
The Cure, literally, her name's Cura.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Yeah. And that playlist is in somewhat chronological order. And the same goes for the climax of Bloody Rose. I actually was in the middle of writing it, and I mentioned Meatloaf or something like that, and someone on Twitter mentioned this Meatloaf song that I wasn't that familiar with, and called For Crying Out Loud. And I listened to it, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And then I kept listening to it, and then I would walk to work, and I could probably fit it in 10 times on the way to and from work each time. And that climax is written like sentence for sentence to coincide with the middle section of that song. And that person, and even there's the line for crying out, or like something like her heart was crying out loud or something like that. And the editors tried to make me change it because it's not like perfect phrasing, but I was like, no, it's got to be this because it's a reference to that song. So
yeah.
Thank God for people on Twitter that mentioned that
for
music.
real.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have another one, MJ or Gabe?
I mean, I have several, but
go ahead, MJ.
Well, just in general, spoiler questions. Because okay, and I'm stealing yours as well, Spencer, because we had the same question.
Go for it.
Ganelon's ending. Can we? I just want to talk.
Close.
Talk to me about that. It hurts my soul. It's so sad. I don't know. It makes me really sad. Is that how you imagined readers would feel, or?
Well, I didn't plan.
Did you want to hurt us?
Until I was writing the epilogue and just was like, well, what would Ganelon do after this? And he would just hate it because he's seen his friends grow old. He's seen them, what's become of them. And he kind of knows too how important he was to them doing what they did. And he kind of likes that, even though like you don't get too much into Ganelon in this book, but he feels it's important to save the world once in a while. So for him, he was just like, well, and I saw this in like the list of questions you sent, like Lastleaf does kill himself with that sword, that if it kills a druid, it brings his mom back.
Okay.
So Ganelon's like, well, in a few years, this fucking undead sorcerer is going to come back, and she's going to be pissed. So should I sit around and wait, 10 years?
So that's what the line. Okay. That makes
okay.
So he's like, or should I go back and get frozen again, and when they need me, come get me.
Yeah, call on me. Oh,
yeah, he kind of realized he's not the kind of person that wants to grow old. So
yeah.
Okay.
Spoiler alert: Ganelon will be unthawed or thawed out in the third book.
Okay.
he's
Nice.
mentioned kind of at the end of the second book, like referenced a little bit.
Yeah.
But more like if this doesn't work, we're going to get Ganelon.
Right.
So yeah, in the third book, they do need him. They do get him. And
Okay.
but I mean, also spoiler alert, I'm probably just going to refreeze him and use him for like a comic series called Ganelon in Space, where
Yeah, but I mean, it's yeah, I love that, and I do love that as like an author trick for you too, because if you can freeze them, then you can anything written in that same world, you could be like, fuck it, Ganelon.
Ganelon's back.
Yeah.
Go little Ganelon. Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. That makes so much more sense now.
That makes me less sad.
Yeah. Because I think when we did the episode last time, I was like, who is he waiting for?
Like, did he get so sad about like his friends growing old that he's just like, nope, just make me a rock again. And then like, Gabe and Spencer, cover your ears. But like when I was reading Bloody Rose, I'm like, he didn't come back. I was like, okay, no, he's really gone. But okay.
Yeah.
He might come back. Okay.
Well, this is also somewhat spoilery, but like at the moment, the main character of the third book is Ganelon and Larkspur's kid.
Yes.
Okay, so I was wondering because I was kind of wondering why he wouldn't want to spend the rest of his life with Larkspur. Weren't they kind of an item by the end of the first book?
But at the same time, he's just like he's just not meant for long-term relationships. Not everyone is.
Right.
He's not. And he does. I mean, he didn't know that he had a son.
Right.
But he would not want to be a father either. He wouldn't think he was a good one. Whether he would be or not, he wouldn't think he was going to be a good one. So
right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I feel better about Ganelon now.
I got one.
I'm not mad anymore.
It was kind of one that I see here. I don't know who I'm stealing it from, but like, did you have a favorite? And I want to break this into two halves. Did you have a favorite character, human character, that was like just the most fun to write, and then your favorite like monster, like Gregor and Dane, Cobalt, any of those guys?
Yeah. Favorite human character, probably Moog.
Yeah. Okay.
As far as like to write, like favorite character, like Clay. But the same goes for like in Bloody Rose. I like the main characters the best because they're nearest to my heart, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But both books, in the third book as well, I always have one character that's like can say any joke no matter how ridiculous, and slip it past the editors. Because
that's so awesome.
So obviously it's Moog in Kings of the Wild, and if any hilarious joke comes up, just he can say it. And granted, we did try to take some Moog scenes out. Even my amazing editor, they tried to take like the scene where the five of them like walk abreast up the hill, and it describes each of them kind of in this like super elaborate way, and then at the end Moog trips and they all fall over top. They want that part gone because they thought it was too ridiculous. Or the part where he's on the airship and he's like pulling hams out and throwing hams on people.
But that's where the line was.
But I got him to keep it. So
nice.
The only I saw on that list, it's only a deleted scene that didn't make it in, was one where the cannibal Jeremy, I think I called him. He was actually he was growing, like he had a secret garden, and he was growing vegetables, and they were like weird. And anyways, he was like, I used to stop and water my garden, and there's this purple carrot, and Moog's like crunching away at this purple carrot, and then meanwhile the cannibal, the way he waters his garden, he's like peeing on it. halfway through this carrot,
like, Moog, stop.
That's so funny.
So that scene I took out. But
amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then how about like the monster side? Did you?
Well, probably Gregor and Dane.
Okay, yeah, because that was by far my favorite.
Yeah, and they're kind of the whole idea for that character is kind of similar to my brother and I, who I love dearly, and I'm super close with. He might as well be twins, even though we're not.
Yeah,
he lies like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah,
just constantly, but always in the service of a good story and to make it better and to make people happy. So I remember the day I was standing up against the wall at my restaurant, just thinking of like, blah, 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 what am I going to write tomorrow? And I was like, holy shit. I think Tyler maybe had just told an elaborate lie. And was like, oh, that's a maybe pretty cool character. And it ended up being obviously a really like, really
No, that's really cool. I
A
agree.
beloved character. Yeah.
Yes.
Say
Yeah.
everyone that, because I've recommended this book to like a million people. And every time, like when I talk to them after, they're all like, oh my God, great book. And I'm like, I know. But they're always like, Gregor and Dane. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
'Cause, yeah, that's the piece where I'm like, this is a book that will make you genuinely laugh aloud while you're reading by yourself. But like, it'll also make you cry. It'll hit you
Yeah.
right in
Yeah.
the
Oh
stomach.
man. Yeah.
Yeah, with a gut punch. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I do like having a character that could just be a mouthpiece for anything, and then also just kind of ratchet some monsters up to be, because you wouldn't think of it. And like if you throw in a D&D campaign and they're just like senseless violence. So
Yeah.
like to throw a little.
Well, I feel like it sets the stage for some of the points made in Bloody Rose
True.
as well, which again, I'm not going to spoil because we didn't say we were going to spoil that one. But yeah, I feel like if you liked the nuance in a monster, you will find a lot to like in Bloody Rose.
Oh,
From
cool.
that angle. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved, we said it in our other episode too, but I loved the idea of Gregor and Dane just being like him having this attached twin who can't see or really comprehend much of what's happening, and just the other brother kind of shouldering that burden and like telling him that everything is wonderful and beautiful to try to give his brother the best life possible. It's a phenomenal character. I would say the 2 points in the book that hit me the hardest, I messaged MJ I think yesterday, and I was like, I've read this book 3 times now, and every fucking time I cry, like I straight up sob when Clay is about to, like, he realizes he needs to leave and go and help Gabe, and his daughter says, but you would go if it were me, wouldn't you, Daddy? And just and his response to that every time, I'm just like, I can't stop crying. It's such an amazing scene. It's
one for me is when Matrick finally finds out about Moog and just like breaks down.
Yes.
That one got me for sure.
Oh,
I was like crying
for
It's
sure.
just
Thank
like
you for saying so. I appreciate it.
Yeah. It's
And
just
I'm sure
super
the scene
emotional.
with Clay and his daughter is what like sold the book in the first place, like 'cause that's quite the hook. And I know I was a good chunk into Bloody Rose before my editor was like, you have a really poignant scene in the first few chapters. Can you do that again with this one? And I was like, sure, okay. So I went back and rewrote the first few chapters, and that changed like everything about the character in the book.
Awesome.
So I ended up having to rewrite the whole book again. So
wow.
I think I know the scene is, assuming it ended in the final, the same one you're talking about there. And it was a good scene to have in the beginning, because it's
it's
right
not
in the fields again.
Yeah.
But can we talk about Clay Cooper for a second though? Because I just want to express my appreciation for having a male protagonist who is married and just pining for his fucking wife the whole book.
Yeah.
I stan it. I love Clay Cooper. Like the whole time, because you know what I mean? Like in the very beginning, it seems a little bit like we might fall into the trope of like, oh, nagging wife, da-na-na.
Yeah.
But then he's like, nah, Jenny, she's the shit, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love Clay so much.
Yeah.
You don't get too many like healthy relationships in fantasy.
Yeah.
No, you don't. And I mean, I've read a lot of books with male protagonists. I don't have an issue with it, but Clay Cooper is by far, to me, my favorite male main character in like an epic style fantasy I think that I've ever read.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, he just has so much nuance to him, and while still being a badass, right? Like he doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm just a little soft boy all the time, which I mean, he could be, but he also is like, no, I'm still gruff and I'm sassy about things, but also my wife.
Yeah. I speaking of that, I love the scene where, and I was gonna say, please, if you ever want to commission artwork, please commission this scene to be made. The scene where they're on the airship and Gabe is looking forward to Rose, and Gabe is on the other side looking backwards towards home. And I just have this image in my head of them up in the clouds and just at either end of the ship looking in opposite directions. I love that scene so much. It's great.
Oh, thank you.
So I even just heard it today as I was trying to finish up my third read. There's a quote that I think Matrick is my favorite character. I think he's the one that says it, and he says, "Something tells me the cake is a lie." Is this a Portal reference?
Well, yeah, it definitely obviously is a Portal reference.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
At the time that I wrote it, I actually thought it was a Dragon Age reference. The first time I saw it, it was Dragon Age referencing Portal.
Yeah.
Character in a cage, and he's like, they said there would be cake. That cake was a lie.
Oh, okay.
I love it. It's like a reference Inception. I love that.
Yeah, that's so great.
Technically, it's a Dragon Age Portal reference. Yeah.
Okay.
I do take a lot of flack for that one. That's one of those things where if someone doesn't like the book, that's always one of the things they're like, "This fucking line was so stupid."
Wait, what? God. Why?
Well, for some people, and it's totally fair to say like the references kind of take them out of the book, which is 100% fair. If you get all of them, and some people don't like being taken out of the book. Whereas to me, it was like, yeah, you don't want to always use it a lot and overuse it, but I think to me it was worth putting references like that in, especially video game references. Where someone reading it would think this author loves the same things that I love.
Yeah.
Therefore, I like them more.
Right.
Therefore, I like this book more.
Yeah. Definitely.
And I think that it's subtle enough that if you haven't played Portal or Dragon Age, then
you would have no idea.
Yeah, you would have no idea. And like, most of the music references, like I probably did not catch 99% of them.
No,
like,
I was gonna say I probably caught 10% of them, right?
Yeah. I didn't know the thing about slow hand, and I think that for the most part, if you're pretty well informed, when you start this book, you kind of know what you're in for. Like if somebody's sold it to you, you kind of know that there's going to be references and that it's going to be a funny book and stuff like that. And so, yeah, that's weird to me that people would complain about that, because it's kind of like, yeah, I know what I'm in for. I know there's going to be references to real world things.
Yeah, but no book is for everyone. And like
That's
you see reviews on young adult books all the time where they're like, 1 star, these characters are juvenile. Yeah, they're teenagers.
That's
you know what I mean?
Point.
So I feel like a lot of times people will pick up a book not necessarily knowing what they're getting into, and then they won't like it, which is fine. It happens,
Yeah.
But they're wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's plenty of reviews that like call the humor like 12-year-old boy humor, and I'm like, have you met a 40-year-old boy? It's the same. Like, you're either funny or you're not fucking funny.
Yeah.
Funny at 12 is still funny at 45. I hate to tell you this.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if it's just not your kind of humor, it's not your kind of humor. But that's another scene. The I call it the boner scene.
Yes.
We were laughing about that.
Yeah. The day I had my agent call, actually, and she was an older British lady, and she was like, we'd like talking about, she's loved it and blah blah. I want to offer you representation, but she was like, I do think the scene has to go. And like I was like, sure, yeah, it's gone. Yeah, totally, I'll lose it. And then when I was calling people, and I called one of my friends, and I was telling her, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to lose the boner scene, and she was like, no. Everyone made me fight for it, so I ended up just changing a couple words around. It's amazing how a few less, words like, I don't know, gestating. A bit more palatable to it.
Definitely.
Right. It's just, baby steps, little tweaks. I love it.
Yeah. It was just the perfect thing to happen in the middle of like this really serious altercation, because then like it happens, they come through the portal, and it talks about one guy like turning to the side to hide.
He's like, hey, do you
his
need
obvious
a
erection?
And he's like just instantly embarrassed.
It's so good.
So it was a good moment of levity in that scene, and also I feel like it gave us a lot of opportunity for some really great mood lines, which I'm always a fan of.
Well, now that we're in the spoiler section, I can say the one thing I do get a lot of flack about is Clay getting his hand back. Because, or just like lack of consequences, which is fair. People think there's like a lack of consequence in the book, which was kind of the point of it, though. It was like if you want to read a book where someone dies or gets disfigured or maimed, try every other book that currently exists. And in 2015, when I wrote it, like try every other book.
Yeah.
They're all grim as fuck.
Yeah.
So shocker, I'm gonna write a book where everyone survives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I sure didn't do that with Bloody Rose, but I gave it my all. Kings of the Wyld. And also he gets his hand back, and it allowed me to put a reference, like to put a joke about like Moog spelling his hand and going, is there starfish in there? Like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's 100% worth
Yeah.
it. 100%.
Yeah, 100% worth it.
Yeah. Consequences versus joke, I'll go for the joke every time.
For
See,
sure.
and that's what you said at the beginning, is that, you know,
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
plot cohesion versus making a joke, we're gonna make a
Yep.
joke. And I love
Right.
that. I think that's what makes the book so different
Yeah.
from so much of the other fantasy that's out there. We talked about this when we did our deep dive on it, where it's you know, it avoids the like self-seriousness that I think a lot of fantasy has, which I don't dislike that in fantasy, but
Yeah.
how cool is it to read something that is just unapologetically fantasy, nerd reference, cool stuff,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
basically explosions and awesomeness and beautiful characters. Like,
I know.
I think that's what makes it so special. Yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
think
the Final Fantasy of books, I like to think of it as.
There you
Final
go.
Fantasy of books.
Not the
Um,
Zelda books.
Not the Zelda book. That would be like a picture book with just,
Yeah.
like, characters.
A book for
So
2-year-olds.
So many shots fired.
Oh.
But yeah, no, to me, if someone doesn't like the book, I'm just like 100%. I get why they don't like it. There was an age where I wouldn't have liked it because it's got goblins and it's got, you know, all that kind of stuff. So just, you know, and I know there's lots of other, like my favorite author, Guy Gabriel Kay, is not for everyone at a certain time in their life. So I'd like to think Kings of the Wyld is for people that like either have never read fantasy or that have read so much of it they know all of it and they kind of want something new. But if you're in your I want super serious world building phase, then you're just going to peace out probably pretty early, you know.
Yeah.
Which is totally fine. I invite you to come back years later.
Yeah.
That's
for
right.
sure.
Try it again. But yeah, you can't please everyone, but yeah.
I want to.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I'll be changing the topic. So if you need to say something on that.
I was just gonna say, I think in our episode I described this book as fantasy ass fantasy, because it's so there's so many like every single kind of monster that you can think of is in there, and I really enjoyed it. It felt a lot like The Witcher, where it's like these fables that you know, and like these kind of mythologies that you know are all kind of in this place, and you get to enjoy them all within a story. And so I was just gonna kind of hop in there and say that I really enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, and I tried to do that on purpose as well, because I was like I said, like I live to get non-fantasy readers to read fantasy books.
Yeah.
So I was trying to write a book that's like you could kind of recommend it to my mom. If she wasn't my mom, would she like it? And so like I love books where someone's got like a new creature that's got a weird name that infests the world, and I'm into it because I love fantasy. But someone who doesn't love fantasy doesn't care. They don't know this word. They don't want to learn the fucking word.
Yeah.
They don't want, you know, this character's name that's like 18 syllables and has an apostrophe in the middle.
Yeah.
Simple names. They want simple names, and they want like character things that they know. So like my mom doesn't like goblins, but she knows what a goblin is just basically. And so while there is like obviously some way more obscure D&D kind of monsters or ones that I made up as well, but I tried to keep things as basic as possible, especially at the beginning. And when fantasy is referenced in the first few chapters, like a Cyclops, you know, he's like tries to describe it, makes fun of it, because like everyone knows what a Cyclops is.
Yeah.
You know, so I like to lure people in with that, you know, basic stuff, and then throw every fantasy trope in the book at them afterwards.
Yeah.
I love it. Converting new fantasy fans. I'm into it.
The plan.
It's a good one. So I want to talk about Caloric for a second, and just about the fact how appreciative I was of how much I hated him and how much he made me hate him. Like it was a very visceral like dislike of this character, which made it really awesome. And then of course his freaking ending of his life was just top notch.
Oh, that was the
that
best
scene was like
10 out of 10.
Like eyes wide open. I was like, holy shit, you know, it was like one of those things where I was just like, wow, I wasn't expecting it, but I'm so fucking glad he did it, you know? Just
Well,
so, I don't know.
So I think that's one of those things where it's like in so many books and in TV shows and media, you're like, why don't you just fucking shut this fucker up?
Yeah.
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 And someone was ranting
Yeah.
away on something.
Yeah.
The only TV show I can think of that I loved it so much because it did that was the show The Last Kingdom. I don't know if you've ever seen it. That main character does exactly what you want him to do. Every moment he's on screen, he does exactly what you want him to
That's
do.
so cool.
I gotta watch it.
Dude, I'm gonna
And
put that
even
in my
things
phone
like,
right
I
now.
remember when I first watched it, I was like, oh, this guy's way too pretty to be like a hero. Because he is gorgeous, this guy.
Wait, who's the actor?
I don't know what his name is, but he gets a bit rougher up, not like Vikings level roughed up.
Yeah.
But that show, like, yeah, it took me a while to get into it. But once I was into it, it was just like had me hook, line, and sinker. And like someone's mouthing off, like this mouthy priest, and he turns away, and the priest says one thing to him, and I'm just like, you should kill him.
Yeah.
Turns around and kills them. Consequences.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
Anything
my
that happens, you're like, oh, I wouldn't do this, buddy. And then he suddenly does exactly what you're thinking he should do.
That's
So
cool.
That's one of those moments where
Yes.
people
No, it was great.
Just
Very, very
Yeah.
satisfying.
And then he does. Well, we talked about it on the deep dive too, that Clay a lot of times will have like this internal monologue where he like is basically like, you know, saying all this funny stuff in his head, and then out loud he's just like, no.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's like the physical version of what just happened there.
Yeah.
He's listening to him go off, and then he's just like, no.
No.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So well, it's obviously good for tension to have, like, you know, bad guys around for a long time. It's also nice to have these moments of like give people what they want.
Just like relief.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, thank God he's done talking.
Yeah.
And dead.
yeah.
And
we won't miss you.
No, then he's dead.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the pool pond joke that was
Yeah.
ongoing with him
Yeah.
was so good. I love.
Yeah, I'm glad. I know some people really love that joke, and I always wondered if it would like land or whether, like, I almost took it out so many
Yeah.
times.
Oh, really?
Oh
Kind
yeah.
of a tricky
No.
one, but some
Yeah.
people love it, so I'm glad I left it in there.
Yeah. That joke and the screeching eagles / screaming
Yes.
eagles.
Yeah.
It's like, do you know what sound an eagle makes? Yes, I know what sound a fucking eagle makes. It's so good. I would love to talk about one of my favorite things that we talked about on the deep dive episode was this discussion about how you have Clay's generation and they go out into the wilderness, they save these princesses or kill the dragon or whatever, and then they come back with, you know, the corpse or the treasure or whatever, and they're kind of paraded through the streets and hailed as these heroes. And then you have the new generation, like Bloody Rose's generation, which is the generation of the arenas. And I don't know if this continues into the sequel book, but these new generations, they figure, like, why would I go out into the wilderness in obscurity when I could be in front of 1 million adoring fans in the arena and get like instant gratification? And I really loved how we saw this, like you can see like why things would change that way. And I really liked how realistic that was. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, or how you kind of came to that?
Like, and I like the whole shtick of the monster hunting mercenaries kind of thing. Like you said earlier, like, although it is a shtick, it does work pretty well. Like, why wouldn't you get famous if you were killing monsters, you know?
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you get someone to, if you had all these different, like, you know, gigs to do, why wouldn't you get someone to manage them for you?
Right.
So I think, like, it kind of fits pretty well into that kind of setting. But at the same time, although, like, the arc of these 3 books, because it spans so long, like the second book is 6 years later, the third book is 20 years after the first book. So you'll see obviously these characters change throughout the course of their lives, but also the world itself change as much as our world did in those eras.
Yeah.
You look at all these so many fantasy worlds, it's like 1,000 years go by and nothing kind of changes, but things do. So in this case, it's kind of touched on in Kings of the Wild, and then kind of, I mean, and inspired by 80s music, because in the 80s, these people were like trying to do, like, in the 70s, they were on buses and they were touring, and they did get really, really huge, but it had such a more wholesome beginning. And, you know, they were drinking and they were probably doing some drugs, but not like comparatively.
Yeah.
Then you get to the 80s and it was like everything louder than everything else. And like, let's go bigger, like stadiums, let's pack them, let's make sound systems bigger, let's act crazier, let's look crazier. So that's, you kind of get that vibe in Bloody Rose, and in Kings of the Wild too, where it's like the next generation is trying to go harder. And say if you were in the road with like Led Zeppelin, you would have like a fun, chill time probably, and everyone would laugh and everyone would love each other. And then if you were on the road with Guns N' Roses, it would just be self-destructive mayhem.
Yeah.
You know, and would you like Axl Rose that much? Like, probably not. So
Yeah.
which makes someone like Rose, who is literally named for Axl Rose, like a more complicated character, because you're not supposed to just be like, oh, what an amazing human being Rose is. It's like, is she a good leader of a band, you know?
Yeah.
And so you do get much more of that what's hinted at in Kings of the Wild. And the fact that, like, yes, they were like, monsters were everywhere. They were attacking villages, towns, everyone was fighting everyone, and humankind needed people to help it out. But then they won, and they kind of got the upper hand. And like, it's like, what you do when you have the upper hand, do you keep it and like stomp down on the throats of those people, or do you try for something a bit more equal? And that's what it really, I think, lends itself well into 90s music, where it's like fucking Rage Against the Machine, and like, you know, and these people living in squalor, wanting to tell their stories, and angry that people aren't listening to them. Or fuck you, I won't do what you tell me, you know.
Yeah.
Saying it. I remember when I was in the 90s, I was like a fucking, you know, privileged white kid that was like, why is he saying this line over and over again? I hate this music. You know, he's saying fuck you, I won't do what you tell me over and over again, so you'll get it through your goddamn head.
Yeah.
But it took me so long to get that. And so I think the music lends itself really well to the world, and I think the world itself, because of the whole ideas of mercenaries and monsters, lends itself well to the music. So it's a pretty good system.
Yep,
for sure.
It is more difficult to make a third book about this situation, like funnier and keep it lighthearted. I feel like I've got to focus more on the story itself and the world, and less on the music a little bit sometimes, because it's a trickier subject. Obviously, you're dealing with, you know, ideas like equality and you know, stuff like that. That's a bit tricky. So hopefully it'll just be good.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I can't wait.
I can't wait.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, I got to go read Bloody Rose now.
Me too.
You do.
Yeah, I'm going to.
For sure.
Going to.
Yeah, I hope you like it. I do think obviously Kings of the Wild is like an idea that I feel lucky to have thought of like first, and maybe someone thought of it first, but like I remember when I came up with it, I was like, I got to write this book before someone else does. Like, because it is I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah, for sure.
And I hope I did it justice. Whereas Bloody Rose is a lot trickier, and you're dealing with a band that's like not as likable because they're in their prime. It's like Kings of the Wild, you're obviously going to like them because they're over the hill, because they're you know, they're underdogs. Whereas Fable and Kings of the or Bloody Rose are not underdogs at all.
Right.
And that's kind of the point. So yeah, to me, I'm much more proud of that second book. It's definitely the best, like the most poignant scenes, the saddest scenes. Like God, I think, I mean, not everyone feels the same, obviously, but if you cried in Kings of the Wild, like Bloody Rose, I bawled my fucking eyes out. Even just reading it, my brother and I did it together, and we just cried and cried and cried all the time.
Oh no.
But at the same time, it's got a character named Roderick, who's kind of based on Rod Stewart, who is he's kind of like my Moog, whatever funny joke I wanted to say. And
nice.
Yeah, he's so
that character, I liked him.
So that kind of leads into one of the other questions I had. Do you think you'll ever do like a prequel where we can see Clay and that whole band in their prime and see what they were like before? Because like Matrick is my favorite character. I love the idea of like this rogue who's just past his prime, and he like pulls his knives out and then drops them and they go tumbling, and he has to like chase after them and stuff. And I would love to see like Matrick in his prime, or Clay in his prime, or you know, I wonder what Moog was like in his prime.
Well, I do get asked that a lot. I think when I first started writing or finished writing Kings of the Wild, while I was setting it out, I started writing a prequel that was like, it was called Bards of the Band, and each thing was written from the perspective of one of their bards.
Oh,
cool.
Oh my God, yes.
So the first bard was in the bar where Clay and Gabe were being introduced to Matrick.
Okay.
And Ganelon was there, and he was being ganged up on, and they all helped him out, and they kind of formed a band then.
Okay.
And then the second story was, and then at the end, the bard got on the table to do something, and he slipped and fell and broke his neck. But in the second one was one where they were going to this university at Oxford, where there was like this wizard that wanted them to help them go look for owlbears. So that's where they would have met Moog. So
that's so
I
cool.
still may one day write that, maybe some short stories, but there is less like drama, obviously, and tension in writing a prequel.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for keeping that area a bit more mysterious. So.
Yeah,
sure.
I could see that.
In many ways, like Kings of the Wild, it's almost like its own prequel to Bloody Rose, because a lot of people just start with Bloody Rose and haven't read Kings of the Wild, which would make like Kings of the Wild so much more poignant when you read it, I think, because you see where all the characters come from.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, I can see that's interesting. I mean, I guess it makes sense, like people would pick it up because it is a standalone sequel, you could read it just on its own.
100%. And I get so many people that email me, they're like, "Oh, I can't wait to read Kings of the Wild." I'm like, "Oh boy, you're gonna fucking love it then if you like."
Right?
Especially because you get to see, like, because some of the characters do come back, and they're referenced the same way they reference crazy times in Kings of the Wild. They reference these crazy times in Bloody Rose. So
cool.
You could always go back and write prequels to everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I hope someday we get Bards of the Band, because that would be so awesome. Was Moog always kind of this goofy guy, or was he more like serious when he was younger? Or?
Oh, when he was younger, I know he's always super goofy.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah, like I had only written like about half of the chapter where they meet him, but he was like, working with combustible. Like I think he says like he's the chairman of combustible sciences, but yeah, he was volatile.
Nice.
Love him.
Yeah. You'll still get, this is a kind of like a minor spoiler too, but I'm thinking of this idea in the third book where I want to have Moog and Matrick back, and I want to have like a potion. Maybe Moog makes up just like one of them. That's like when you drink it, you revert back in age until you're like a baby, essentially, over the course of about 2 days. And as they're discussing like who's going to drink this potion, what's going to happen, Matrick just downs it.
No.
And so and this is before the climax. So by the time the climax of the third book comes along, Matrick's going to be like absolutely in his fucking prime, just an unbelievable,
cool,
like juggernaut. But then in the epilogue, he's going to be a baby, and Moog is going to be like his primary caretaker. And I think it'd be like a really cute. I obviously haven't written it yet, so that'll be the end. But I think it'd be a really good ending for those characters because they have such a funny relationship.
Yes.
To know that Matrick's going to live a second life and Moog is going to be his dad is fucking
freaking awesome.
Yeah,
that's killer.
I told them that once. They're like, "Oh, you could do Adventures of Young Matrick, like with Moog as his
surrogate dad."
So,
love that.
I would definitely love that. I loved Matrick so much. I know why people say like Moog is their favorite character or like Clay or whatever, but Matrick, I'm always a sucker for the rogue character, and he was just so funny and cynical and get me the fuck out of here. What was that? I said get me the fuck out of here.
I'm glad you like him. He's like definitely when people say their favorite character, he's the least on that list.
Oh, really? Matrick?
Yeah, I would say he's just ultimately.
Yeah, I guess
someone's got to be.
Yeah, someone's got to be.
I feel like it's usually him. So I'm glad you like him.
I love that. Yeah.
I want to mention Kit too.
Before Kit.
Yes.
I really enjoyed Kit.
Kit, you old ghoul.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I loved Kit as well.
Yeah, I love. He's another character that you can kind of have him say anything ridiculous.
Yep.
Yeah.
And does he show up? He's unkillable. Does he show up in any of the other?
He's not in the second one, but I do plan to have him in the third one.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
awesome.
Yeah. I love this idea that all their other bards have died. And then at the very end,
unkillable bard. I thought that was
a
nice touch.
Also, their bards dying. Their bards dying is a reference to. I don't know if anyone's ever seen This Is Spinal Tap. But it's supposed to be like a mockumentary, like a fake documentary, by the same people that did like Best in Show and all those other kind of ones. The guy who was the Six-Fingered Man in Princess Bride is the guy who directs all these mockumentaries. But it's like a rock documentary, and in it, their drummers keep dying mysteriously. And someone's like, one guy just exploded on stage, and they're just like, I think it's a mystery best left unsolved. So that the dying bard is a reference to
Okay, cool. Awesome. I guess my last like big discussion question is how did you go about like making these characters feel like they've known each other for so long? And maybe that's a dumb question, but I just felt like throughout reading it, there was so many references. Like Moog would be like, did I ever tell you guys why it says suffer no tyrants on the gate? And they're like, yes. And he's like, oh, okay. And it just kind of, it just leaves it. I loved moments like that because it built that connection.
Yeah. I just got lucky, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, to be honest, it's like one of those things where I would say I would thank like the music references, because there's so much based on old bands. And like when you look at some of these old bands, I watched a lot of documentaries and read some books on them and stuff like that. No matter what they go through, and even the 80s ones are sometimes a bit more contentious, but they go through thick and thin together, and they have blowouts and fights and I fucking hate you and this and that. But then they're just like become family. And there's a speech in Bloody Rose that kind of like puts that all into one cohesive thought. Certainly more eloquently than I can now, but ultimately, yeah, it's just like one of those things. It's like enduring friendships, and I feel like with a lot of Kings of the Wild, I got lucky, not only in the publishing process, but just the idea of it. Like I'm lucky I thought of it.
Nice.
I feel like lucky, maybe not so much for that. Like that's skill. I'm just gonna be like, no, just own it.
The idea,
you crushed it.
Maybe the whatchamacallit is like skill, but like the idea is like lucky. Like I don't know. Like shower thoughts. When I was still writing it, when I was telling people about my book, like if I told them about my old book, I'd be like, oh, it's about these two cultures and they hate each other and blah, blah. I was getting to stuff and people's eyes would just kind of glaze over.
Right.
But when I would say, oh, Kings of the Wild's about like, like the rock bands are mercenaries and blah, 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 blah. And their eyes would light up.
Yeah.
And I was only halfway done writing it. And I was like, okay, this is a way better idea.
Yeah.
Well, and it has like that snappy hook that you can say. Because like when I have been recommending it to people, I'm like, it's this mercenary band, but they're like all old now and they have to get back together to like do one last mission. And people are like, what? Because it's just like, that doesn't get at all of it, but that's like the hook. And
right. Yeah. Well, you mentioned a speech from Bloody Rose. I just want to say Golden Gabe's speech in Kings of the Wild. It's so good. It's so powerful.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, on the the playlist, the chapter by chapter playlist, it's got a song from Pink Floyd that goes along with that speech.
Okay.
And I think in that one I had to put like parentheses underneath to explain, because the song is about like, I want to say 21 minutes long. And it's a very particular point at about 17 minutes where just an insane, like this slow rising tide has been building up, which that word kind of made it into like the paragraphs before it.
Yeah.
Builds up. And then it just like, and scintillating is the only word I can think of right now to describe what happens with this song. And I once again, I would thank this song for doing it, because so if you ever want to revisit it and look at that playlist, I think it'll be kind of cool.
For sure. All right, well, we will go into our I guess like kind of final closing thoughts here. One of mine is that I just wanted to say that my favorite quote from Kings of the Wild is this one where Clay Cooper is visiting his mother's tombstone, and we're kind of seeing all that for the first time. And he says, there were only the words, "Be kind," carved into the birch's brittle skin, as if whoever carved them had been crying or a child or both. And I mentioned it in our deep dive. I'm like, that is an incredible prose right there. Like that. I love that so much, because there's so many other ways that you could have said that wouldn't have been as impactful. But like the way it's all like phrased and positioned is so perfect. And yeah, that's
like a master class in subtext too, because it doesn't actually tell you what happened,
right.
but it does.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So yeah, as we close up here, so you got the 90s book that you're working on. Have you thought about working on anything outside of kind of the band universe?
Yeah, I mean, I've just recently co-wrote my first comic.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
With somebody like in an existing world. A guy wrote to me and said he sent me copies of his comic and PDFs, and he was like, I wrote this, it was so inspired by Kings of the Wild, like I hope you like
saw
it.
this.
Yeah, and so it's called Barbaric, and it's awesome. It's awesome. And it's about a barbarian who's like, he's cursed to always help people if they ask him, and he doesn't want to at all, and then he's got a bloodthirsty axe that can like talk and wants to like drink blood.
Cool.
So getting to write that, I've always wanted to write comics, and being able to write that like in training wheels with this other person, in a setting that was kind of inspired by my own setting, so the humor was already kind of easy to step into. Was like, I'm so grateful for that experience. So I would definitely like to write some more comics as well. But I do have an idea for the next like trilogy, let's say, that I would like to write, and I don't know much about it yet, but I would have to probably do a lot of reading beforehand, but I wanted to make it like obviously the same kind of humor, the same kind of ensemble cast, but like set in like maybe like a gothic horror setting.
Oh, cool.
Oh, cool.
So I would and I wanted to see if I could make it a little bit scary, like still funny and still like, my voice, but a little bit scary too.
Yeah.
Basically inspired by the music of Danny Elfman, who does like Edward Scissorhands and the old and the Simpsons theme song, and he's got kind of this awesome kind of gothic horror music. So
sweet.
very tentative.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you read many horror books?
None. I just listened to my first one recently called Between Two Fires by the guy who wrote The Black Tongue Thief.
Oh my God, that book just came in the mail for me today. Like I just bought it. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I haven't read it yet. Yeah, I'm excited for it though.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah. And once again, I've seen people online some people that don't like it, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? Because it's like every page, almost every paragraph is fucking phenomenal. And so people may not like and granted, there's people that don't read for prose and things like that. So, it's not your cup of tea. It's not your cup of tea. But I've never in my life, every page, I was like, anyone was around, like, oh my God, you got to listen to this. Oh my God, you got to listen to this. And I was fortunate enough to someone asked me, Midworld Press is doing a special edition of it, and asked me to write a foreword for it.
Oh, cool.
I did not have time to write, but I was like, who writes forewords? Like, Damon, as far as I know. Like, I can't pass up this like.
That's awesome.
It's written forward. So I wrote a foreword for Black Tongue Thief.
Nice.
It's an incredible book, I think.
Yeah.
I really hope you like it. I can't wait to hear. If you don't like it, I won't hold it against you.
No,
I thought you were gonna be like, I won't want to talk to you anymore.
I won't hold it against you. Yeah. But I really hope you like it, even half as much as I do.
Yeah, I'm stoked. The concept sounds fascinating, and I loved Black Tongue Thief.
Yeah,
so,
he was a horror writer, and that book is like, it's hilarious. Like, it's funny, but at one point it is terrifying.
Dude, it's got some dark moments in Black Tongue Thief. Yeah. So.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and a lot of humor, but there's some parts where it's like, oh snap.
I had picked up Black Tongue Thief on audiobook, and it's not that I didn't like it or anything. I just think I need to pick it up in physical form, because the audiobook narrator, he had such a thick, I think it was Irish accent.
That's the author.
Oh, is it the author?
Yeah, and it's not his real accent. He's putting it on.
Really?
See, I
read his own book.
I couldn't understand anything he was saying, and so I was like a chapter or two in, and I'm like I can't hear, like my ear isn't tuned that way.
If it's just not hitting for you. Yeah.
So I'm like, I want to read it. I just got to pick up the physical copy, because I've heard it's really good.
Yeah, I hope you like it.
Yeah. And then as we close out, MJ, anything you want to plug? You got your book 2 coming out sometime in the future, but you're also working on, have I heard that you're working on a cyberpunk book or something?
I'm working on all kinds of stuff, man. I got like 4 works in progress right now. But I have the sequel. It's coming out theoretically next summer, but we don't have a date yet. So like, you know how publishing is. It's coming out TBD 2023.
Right.
And then I have a couple other, epic fantasy stuff in the works. I do have a cyberpunk project in the works, which is pretty exciting.
I love cyberpunk stuff. That's great.
Dude, me too. I had read so much cyberpunk to like, get myself ready to write this project. And now I just can't get enough of it. I just keep reading it. But yeah, so stay tuned, guys. I have nothing I can actually like talk about with anything, but there's stuff.
Okay.
When you write your cyberpunk stuff, do you put on like synthwave music to listen to, or?
I totally have a Spotify playlist called Cyberpunk Vibes that is like just because you gotta get in the right headspace.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
The next comic that I want to do, I want to try to do my own comic, and it's cyberpunky.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
It's a whole soundtrack of that kind of stuff.
Yes. Oh, I love it. We should trade playlists so we can.
We should, yeah.
share the music vibes. I know we should.
So in intro to cyberpunk, what do I read?
I mean, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is like one of the quintessential. Some of the favorites that I've read, Autonomous by Annalee Newitz. I loved that one. Waist Tide. That was weird, but like a good weird.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch. I can send you like a list.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, is any other final thoughts from anybody before we close it out?
No, this was awesome. Thank you. I'm
great.
so excited that we got the chance to chat with you.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you all for the time you've dedicated to this book. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for coming on to our little podcast.
My pleasure.
All right, guys. Well, we are going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for joining us for our chat with Nicholas Eames. Be sure to follow him and MJ on Twitter. I'll have all their stuff linked down below. Remember to check out our second channel, which will also be linked below. And make sure you're hip thrusting those like and subscribe buttons so that Gabe doesn't drown in his cage in my basement. Although he will be out of water once it all goes away. So, consider your options here. Upcoming episodes include an interview with Kel Cade, author of King's Dark Tidings. That's happening next week. It should be posted the week after this gets posted. A Creators Corner episode with Craig from the Legendarium. And we're also in talks with Mike from Mike's Book Reviews for a couple different videos. We'll do something on his channel. He'll do something on ours. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll see you in the next episode. And until next time, don't let your toothy grin wither like a cock in cold water.
Yes.
That's like the best one yet,
Yeah.
I feel like. Dude.
Yeah. This book is so quotable that I haven't had any
So
problem
quotable.
like doing.
Sounds like 12-year-old boy humor to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then I don't know what I am because I find it really funny.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
That a woman of taste and distinction. Huh?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
That's
thank
right.
you.